Charles Morgan had the unfortunate luck to die at the age of 17 in 1938. His mother thought he had a stroke. His father thought his appendix had burst, but only Charlie to his friends, knew that it had been a brain aneurysm. The man in the dark cloak with the pale face had told him as much before he asked if he wanted to come with him. Charlie had declined, telling him he wanted to stay a little longer and see what became of his parents. The man in the cowl only shrugged and told him not to stick around too long, or he might never make it out. Charlie had given him the bird as he left, but now he wished the man had told him how to leave. It turned out that it was a hell of a lot easier to die than it was to know what to do after you were dead. Charlie had watched his parents age 20 years after his death, and both of them had finally sold the house at the ripe old age of 60 and gone on to whatever life they had after that. Charlie couldn't follow them. He had died in the house, and he was tied to the house. But that was okay. His parents had been a little boring, but the people who moved in after them had been fun. His parents had moved out in 1960, and Charlie had had the house pretty much to himself since then. In that time, 14 families had lived in the house where he died. Some of them he scared. Charlie turned out to be pretty good at scaring. Some of them he just watched, wanting to know how other families were, what they did. Those were fun. Charlie liked just watching people sometimes. You got to learn a lot about people when you just sat around and watched. Some of the families had kids that Charlie talked to. The young ones were usually a little more in tune with the spirit world, and some of them could see and talk to you. To adults, you were just a child's imaginary friend. But to that child, you were real. And that made Charlie feel like he was alive again. Some of the kids had other ways of communicating with spirits, and Charlie liked to mess with them. Charlie had seen it. Ouija boards, spirit catchers, automatic writers, ghost boxes, spirit radios, and every other damn thing that was supposed to help you talk to ghosts. It was as if none of them had ever thought about just talking to ghosts. Charlie liked to talk, and if they had just approached him and talked, he would have talked back to them. When they broke out the hardware, though, that was when Charlie really had fun. He would move their planchette to make it say awful things or scary things. He would crumple up their spirit catchers and throw them in the garbage can. He would whisper disturbing things into their spirit radio or make their spirit boxes send back strange and often cryptic answers. It was all good fun for him. Charlie didn't have anything better to do and liked having something to pass the time. When the Winstons moved in, Charlie found that he was the one who was afraid. The Winstons were a nice enough family. Roger Winston was the father, and he worked as a foreman at the steel mill where Charlie's father had once worked. It probably wasn't the same meal as it had been in the 1930s. But Charlie had only been there once on a class trip, so he really didn't have any way to know. Patricia Winston was a stay-at-home mother who shuffled around the house and kept the place clean enough. She liked to watch daytime talk shows, and Charlie found that he liked Maury Povich and Jerry Springer enough to sit in the living room while she cleaned and soak up the drama. And to a ghost, emotions are better than a piece of chocolate cake. And then there were the children, Terry and Margaret Winston. They were 12 and 16, respectively, and neither of them really believed in ghosts. Their friend told them stories about the ghost that lived in the haunted house that their parents had bought, but the two kids just waved it off as superstitious nonsense. Margaret was too busy worrying about boys to worry about ghosts, and Terry fancied himself a man of science and believed there was likely a scientific reason for whatever anomalies were happening in the house. There would be no talking to these two. Charlie was sure of that. But then came the Halloween party that changed everything. The Winston parents had gone out of town to help with the funeral arrangements for Mrs. Winston's beloved aunt. They had left Margaret in charge, telling her that she was not to have people over, and she was not to do anything reckless while they were away. Margaret's response to this was to have a small get-together with some of her friends and let Terry invite a few of his little friends over. Some of them brought alcohol and music and scary movies and things to while away the evening, but one of Margaret's friends brought over a Ouija board, and Charlie saw his chance to have a little fun. They invited Terry and his friend in to hold this session with them, and Charlie had practically wrung his hands together in glee. He started with the usual ghostly pranks, spelling out strange things to the planchette, pretending to be different people, and generally making those involved feel nervous. All the people assembled looked amused, but definitely on edge. All but one. She had a knowing look about her, a look that told Charlie that she had done this sort of thing before. She looked at Charlie's antics without much fear and without much apprehension, and when she had the rest of them clasp hands, she appeared to know what she was doing. There may be a capricious spirit here, but I'm not trying to talk to someone who knows nothing outside the walls of this home. I read the name in one of my mother's books, and I want to talk to the entity she spoke to when she was a girl. I call upon... And when she spoke the name, it sounded too big for her mouth. It was too many consonants, not enough vowels. The words too much for anyone with a tongue to speak. The name was unknown to Charlie. And, by the way, it made him feel he would have just as soon had it remain unknown. Suddenly a presence filled the room that Charlie had never experienced before and would have just as soon gone right on not knowing about. It filled the room like smoke, its presence spilling out like the long shadows right before evening. There were a few other spirits in the house, but Charlie had never seen anything like this. It was shapeless and seemed to exist only in the shadows. Its eyes, however, were flared red coals, the two of them growing as long as the shadow that now cast across the Ouija board. Spirit, do you walk among us? They all had their hands on the little planchette, waiting for whatever spirit this girl had called in to speak. But it didn't seem very talkative. The girl's face scrunched up in confusion, as if she had been expecting to hear something, and as the silence stretched on, Margaret leaned over and whispered something to her. The other girl told her to hush and went back to messaging the spirit to talk to them. But it just bloomed over them, looked at the group as if it were sizing up who would be the tastiest to start with. Charlie had always been a trickster, not a Casper, the friendly ghost sort, but watching this thing stretch its hands out and prepare to grab one of the unsuspecting children made him feel terrible. He teased them, he scared them, but he didn't want to hurt them. The thought of the spirit hurting them made him feel sick, and he leaned forward and moved the planchette as the collected group watched. G-E-T-O. Get out. Go away. Abby, something's telling us to leave, Margaret said. That's not the spirit I called. That's the spirit that was already here. Go away, trickster. We don't want to speak to you. Speak to us, wise one. Tell us your knowledge. The shadow creature said nothing. Instead, it slithered its long, shadow fingers towards the unknowing children and seemed to snare them with those cruel digits. They shivered as the shadow entered them, all of them but the girl who had called it. She still bent over the board as if she couldn't believe that it hadn't worked. Speak to us. Speak to us! Come on, say something! This always worked when Mom... She stopped talking, and she noticed the planchette moving frantically under her hand. Charlie was telling her to leave, telling her to run, telling her to get as far away from this place as she possibly could. He had liked to mess with the kids, but whatever was happening here was too much. The kids had begun to jerk like marionettes under the hands of someone who doesn't quite know what they're doing. Their movements looked sick and uncoordinated, their bodies scrunched up like bugs trapped in a bug zapper. The girl who had summoned this creature didn't notice. How could she? She was still looking at the Ouija board like it had all the answers to all the questions that anyone could ever ask. She went right on reading Charlie's message, her mouth scrunched up as she sounded out the words, and then she shook her head and looked around the room as if she intended to laugh and just couldn't bring one to the surface. Run? Why would I run? I'm not in any danger. I've never been in any danger. This entity is an old friend. He wouldn't... That was when she seemed to notice the kids around her had changed. 2 of them, girls that Charlie had never learned the names of, were smiling a little too wide, in a way that made him think their jaws might be breaking. Margaret had blood running down her cheeks as her fingers seemed to be trying to tear out her own eyelashes. Her brother and his friends are trying to rip off each other's ears, blood running down the sides of their heads as they yanked pitifully. The smiling girls had already begun to tear their clothes off, and the whole room began to stink with the smell of fresh blood. Charlie remembered that smell. He'd smelled blood just before he never smelled anything ever again, but he didn't think there had been this much blood, even when his brain had suddenly let go. The children fell on her, pushing the would-be mystic onto the floor and on top of the Ouija board. They ripped at her, their fingers tearing her clothes and then her skin, and then pulling at her bones. She started to scream, but it only lasted until they found her vitals. As they tore at her, it was as if something opened in that hateful square of cardboard. All of them began to fall, dropping into whatever void had been created by the Ouija board, and suddenly, they were all gone. With its sacrifice taken, the spirit turned its eyes to Charlie, and it spoke inside his head in a voice that would have sent most people running for their lives. Get in my way again, and it will be the last thing you ever do. Then it simply rolled itself up into the closet like a deflated child's toy, and the room was empty. There was no blood, no torn clothes. And the only evidence that anyone had been here was a plate of cooling pizza and a bowl of soggy popcorn. The Ouija board was still there, the planchette still in the death center where it had been left. It was the only evidence the police found, and all the children were considered missing when the parents returned to find the house empty. All the doors had been locked from the inside, all the windows had been secured, and neighbors claimed they had seen other children coming over that night, but had not seen anyone leaving the next day. The parents of the other children said that Margaret told them she had been allowed to have a few friends over, but none of them seemed to have any idea what had happened to the children once the sun had gone down. That was how Margaret's mother found herself in her daughter's bedroom, sitting on the floor looking at the Ouija board. Her husband was out. He had decided the home didn't feel as welcoming as it once did. She was drunk on cooking sherry and dozing against her daughter's nightstand when the planchette began to move on the board. She thought she was imagining things. When he began to find the letters on that sinful piece of cardboard, she sat up and took notice. He returned to the middle and then started again, spelling out the same message before returning to the middle again and again. He took your children. He took them somewhere, but no one can go. Even though he was not strong enough to stand up to that spirit, Charlie wanted to give her something his own mother had not been allowed to have. He wanted the woman to have a little bit of closure. And if it gave her comfort, then he supposed that would be worth something. The summertime in the cul-de-sac was the time of year we all looked forward to. 3 months of no school, days spent running the sidewalks and riding bikes, and the familiar sound of the ice cream truck a couple times a day. We were all just middle-class kids, and those without older siblings were under no orders to stay with the group if they went out. We lived in those halcyon days when you didn't come in until the street lights came on, and Mom was only worried when something came out of the newspapers about stranger danger or an abduction. The street I lived on had about 12 families, and all of them have kids. Me and Mikey Castro were best buds. We had been since first grade. There were usually enough kids out on the road riding bikes or shooting hoops to get a game of stickball or soccer going if we wanted. Sometimes, if their parents were cool with it, we'd play touch football in someone's yard, or I'd drag my radio flyer wagon out of the garage and we'd load it up with plastic guns and play war. Most of the kids came in pairs to play the game of the day, pairs of triplets or even quads, but everyone on the block had someone or several someones. Solo kids stood out like a sore thumb, and we all usually chummed together. I'll tell you all this so I could tell you that Robbie was odd by the standards of the neighborhood. Robbie didn't have a best friend, and I'm not entirely sure that he had any friends at all. He was a skinny kid, rail thin, my mom would have said, with big, thick glasses and a mouth made for frowning. He never joined in our games, and we never really offered. We weren't unfriendly kids, far from it, but Robbie didn't feel right. I don't know how that sounds, but a weird kind of haze seemed to hang over Robbie. It always reminded me of the stink lines around Pigpen and the Peanuts, but this one felt more like VB static. It was a low background sound that hung around him, and if I spent too much time around him, I always felt like I had a headache coming on. He used to draw on the sidewalk with colored chalk. We all joked that his dad must bring back the defective sticks from the chalk factory where he worked. No matter the temperature, no matter the season, Robbie was out there drawing on the sidewalk. It was the summer of '92, and Mikey had a new super soaker. He wanted to do a water war, so all of us with water guns showed up to play. I had a couple of water pistols from Easter, and Steve Westers had about 3 of those big super soakers that were popular the year before. He and his 2 brothers took them, and some of the other kids had a ragged collection of water pistols and water balloons. There were about 11 of us in all. We divided up teams as fairly as we could. The opposing side had more guys, but one of them was Davey Michaels and his club foot. It kinda held him back from running. We were soaking each other in lukewarm water when I heard someone yell in frustration. I looked up to see Robbie shaking his wet arm, scowling at 2 of the Wester brothers who had soaked him with their guns. "What are you doing? You'll erase it! Get away from here! This is my sidewalk! Mom said so!" Some of us stopped squirting each other, moving closer as he brandished his piece of chalk like a dagger at the Westers brothers. They were backing away too, like whatever he had might be catching, and he bent back down to fix the chalk drawing, the one that they had ruined with their water guns. I approached Robbie, meaning to apologize, but he stood up and brandished the chalk at me again. "Get away! This is my sidewalk! Go play on your sidewalk!" I laughed. "Robbie, sidewalks are for everyone. You can't own a sidewalk." "Can too," he belted. "Can too! My mom says so! This sidewalk in front of our home is mine!" I took a step forward, trying to calm him down, but then I saw what he had been drawing and recoiled a little. For a drawing, he was very expressive. I'd later think of cave paintings or early primitive drawings, but this was far more savage. It was a tall man with long frilled arms, long spindly legs. His chest was equally long, stretching in many colors as it tapered up to a rounded head with a pair of stubby horns on it. His eyes were spirals that swirls changing colors as well as they swirled into the irises. Even wet, it looked very formidable. "What is that?" I asked, and Robbie must have heard something in my voice. He grinned. "That's the chalk man. I draw him all the time. He comes to me at night, tells me that if I don't, he'll get me. So I draw him everywhere, on the sidewalk, on the carport, even on the back patio." I shook my head, turning to go, but I heard him say something else, and it made my blood run cold. I put him out here because he says he likes to watch you guys." "What?" I half whispered as I turned back around. What did you say?" "I said he likes to watch you kids while you play." Someday, when none of you are paying attention, he'll grab one of you and drag you into his little world and gobble you up. That's what he says, anyway. He shrieked again when I started spraying the chalk drawing. I couldn't have told you why I did it, but I felt certain that it needed to be done. The thing needed to be gone forever. And as it started to fade, I heard my squirt gun hiss as it went empty. I moved away slowly, Robbie still crying as he yelled at me for ruining it, and when Mikey came over to see what was going on, I found I couldn't look away from the spot where Robbie was fixing that horrid creature. "What was that about?" Mikey asked, Robbie still shooting me murderous looks. I tried to find my words for it, but I was unable. I don't know. He said something I didn't like. It made me feel... I chewed my lip, trying to find something to describe it and coming up short. Bad. Really bad. The water war was starting to wind down now, most of us on our third or fourth tank, and we were all soaked and shivering. "Come on," said Mikey. "I just got a new Super Nintendo game. We could dry off and you could borrow some of my clothes." I nodded and allowed myself to be pulled away. But it was hard to look away from that hunched figure as he worked over the chalk drawings of his monster. We spent the afternoon playing a new spaceship game that had been gotten. I can't remember the name, and I was shocked to look out and see that it was getting dark. The streetlights would be coming on now, and my mom would be angry if it got dark and I wasn't home. Mikey asked if I wanted to ask his mother to drive me, but his house was only a few blocks down from my house. "If I run, I can make it," I told him, and I headed off towards my home. The afternoon had gotten away from me, the sun riding low and the night fast approaching. I'd have to run if I intended to make it home, but as I ran down the path and towards the sidewalk, I stopped as I saw something I'd hoped to avoid. Stretched across the sidewalk, the multicolored chalk, very bright, was the Chalkman. He was even bigger than he had been earlier, his arms seeming to twine around the fence posts, and I hopscotched over and around him as I took off for home. I was going to be late if I didn't all but fly down the pavement. I hadn't gone very far, though, when I saw another Chalkman just as large as the last. His mouth was open, revealing teeth as sharp as knives. A mouth that size would have no problem gobbling me up whole. I ran around this one too, but it wasn't the last. They seemed to be everywhere. And Robbie had been busy indeed. The Chalkman was rising and writhing around the concrete, his mouth open and closed as I ran, those gnashing teeth going up and down as my fervent strides bore me on. I was filled with the terror of bedroom closets and growlings beneath the bed. These chalk drawings made me feel the way that strangers sometimes did, the way I felt when I listened to a scary story, the way I felt when I was outside at night. When I tripped, my cry had nothing to do with the way the pavement ate up my hands and knees. I thought I had just caught the edge of the sidewalk in my haste, but as I looked back, I felt my neck hair stand up. A single chalk hand, the purple claw looking huge and cruel, had risen up to grab my ankle as I ran. The Chalkman was even now rising from the pavement, its gnashing teeth chomping at my ankle. It nearly had me too. I was so surprised to find a chalk arm rising from the concrete. This was no cartoon. Things like this didn't happen in the real world. It had dragged me halfway to its gaping maw before I realized I wasn't dreaming. After bashing my head on the sidewalk, I pulled, and I pulled hard, but his hands were strong. He dragged me back, more of me rising as he yanked at me, but it seemed fate had only other ideas. He grabbed not the whole ankle, but my sock, and as his hand slipped on the fabric, I was up and moving before I could latch back around it. I was running, I was dodging around other chalk drawings, and when I saw my house coming into view, I breathed a little easier. That wasn't until I saw the Chalkman outside my own gate. He was already rising like a blighted weed from the pavement, and I knew I couldn't get around him. I sidestepped into the neighbor's yard, and that's when I saw it. His hose was coiled around the spigot, and I reached for the nozzle as the shadow of that thing fell over me. It was rising huge now, coming up, and I unwound the hose, and when the water hit it, the Chalkman seemed as surprised as I was. It stepped back, some of its color fading, and as I pelted it with water, the chalk began to run into the gutter. He was melting like the Wicked Witch, and as he fell away to nothing, I turned off the hose and I ran the rest of the way home. I came in panting, and any anger my mom might have had was washed away like the chalk man. I told her I felt like someone had been trying to snatch me. She made the usual sounds about people being watchful. She fed me, she told me to get ready for bed, but I knew there wouldn't be any sleep for me tonight. How could I sleep with the image of that chalk running through my head? For the next several nights, I had bad dreams about the chalk man. In my dreams, I didn't get away. In my dreams, the chalk man dragged me across the pavement, and the last thing I saw before I woke up was him pulling me into his mouth. After that night, I didn't see any more of the sidewalk drawings. Some people in the neighborhood had complained, and Robbie was only allowed to draw them in front of his own house. His parents got fined, I heard, and his dad grounded him from drawing for a week. I assume he still did, since the chalk man never got him, but the chalk man never darkened our sidewalks again. I can remember on the days when I found myself close to the madly scribbling boy. The chalk man still seemed to move, but it could have been heat shimmer. Those are but the rememberings of a child. They're so vivid, I often wonder how much is speculation and how much truly happened. Ever find yourself jobless, angry, and fed up? If not, I envy your life. Unfortunately, that's the state I find myself in. Worked at a grocery store for about a decade. Customer decided to get rough with one of the other employees over some goddamn baby formula. One punch later, they're getting a couple $100 in gift certificates not to sue, and I'm out the door. I'd say, funny how life works. Really, there's nothing funny about my situation. So, here I sit, combing through Reddit for some horror to take my mind off my impending financial doom, watching 80s slasher films when that gets old, and rereading my Stephen King collection, of course. I mean, it'd be a good life if I wasn't sneaking ever closer to starvation. One day, though, I get a chat request, right? I accept it. See a phone number. My first thought is that it's from some kind of ARG, so wallowing in shame, worry, and boredom, I give it a call. Thank you for calling Project Insomnia. How may I direct your call? An upbeat female voice says. Got sent this number on Reddit, so I'm wondering what everything's about, I reply. Good for you. I'll connect your call, the voice replies. After a few minutes of hold music, that's exactly as you'd expect, someone answers. Nathan, glad you decided to call. I've heard you're looking for employment and enjoy horror, am I correct? The professional-sounding man says. I'm a little weirded out. I'm not the type to use my name online much. Of course, that isn't my name, but a stand-in. I'm sure you all know that. And I certainly haven't been posting about my financial state. Till this, anyway. But people who run ARGs can get really into the weeds, so I don't really think of it too much. Right on both accounts. Why? I reply. We have an opportunity for you. 2 weeks of your time, using your skills, $20K. The voice says simply. God, I could use that money in real life. But hey, guess we'll keep my mind off things while I wait for some answers on resumes, so sign me up, I answer. Nathan, I think you're misunderstanding. We're not running any kind of game. I'm offering you money for your time. The voice sounds mildly annoyed. Really? Huh. Well, I'll bite. What's the catch? Is this some kind of MLM, pyramid scheme? What's going on? I ask. Details can be given in person. I'll send you a location. We can meet and see if you feel the job is a good fit. I'd request you bring a suitcase in case you feel like taking us up on our offer. There are many other people who have been chosen, and time is a factor, the voice explains. I get some mild BS vibes from his statements, but it's not like I have a full schedule. A couple days later, I find myself in a small diner a couple of towns over, sitting with a man in a plain black suit. He doesn't seem nervous, but there's a vigilance in his eyes, like he's used to watching out for things. Glad to see you've made it. You wouldn't believe how hard it is to get people to believe you're paying 20 grand, the man in front of me says. I would. I mean, I'm waiting for the part where you tell me it's split up over a decade, requires a 5K deposit. Before that, though, can I know who I'm talking to? I ask. You can call me Adrian, and I assure you, what I'm offering is real. By the end of this meeting, if you so choose, I'll have the money in your account, is Adrian's reply. There's some silence. A waitress comes over. Anything I can get for you two? The middle-aged lady asks. Coffee for me. And a clubhouse sandwich with fries for my friend, Adrian replies. I'm not shocked that he knew what I'd order. More amused. Whoever these people are, they've dug into me. So you're trying really hard to cultivate a mysterious aura. And I mean, it's working, though, you know? What's the job? I say. Simple, really. We want you to watch horror. Lots of it. For extended periods of time. And give your observations. Adrian said. Is this some kind of, like, AI training shit? Because I don't know if I'm that desperate, I reply. No, Nathan. You'll be watching real people. Nothing artificial about it. But I know the question you're really asking. Why are we offering you so much money for something you do every day, while you hope to get a call back from the sanitation office or a McDonald's? The answer is not going to be as exciting as you think. Your accommodations are going to be rather Spartan, somewhere between a small apartment and a prison cell. We need secrecy and a high volume of participants, hence the arrangement, Adrian explained. My food comes. I feel like I'm under a microscope as I eat, Adrian's eyes dissecting my every movement. So, there's some kind of test run, I'm guessing, like Halloween-themed attractions at an amusement park. You're paying for me to shut up about it more than anything? I question. Adrian gives a half shrug. Close enough for government work. So what's the verdict? I have 2 more people I have to see tonight. Adrian offers, sliding over a small stack of papers and a pen. I read through the contract, smirking a little. This is some McCamey Manor stuff here, Adi. Like, this part about consenting to methods of encouragement that may lead to physical harm. You can't sign away your rights against assault, so clearly you guys aren't going to be knocking anyone's teeth out. Adrian smiles. No one in organization has any intent to put hands on you. Astute observation, though. If you want my opinion, remove those parts. Just let people imagine what bad things could happen. But all the real bits seem in order. So what about my money? I ask. The grin Adrian gives me should have been my warning sign, but I was too busy getting a notification of $20,000 in my nearly empty bank account. Jesus, Murphy, you weren't kidding, were you? It's like someone tried to turn a submarine brig into a bachelor pad, I say, looking around the small room. There's a bed with thin sheets, a large desk with a few dozen monitors, and that's about it. Enough room to maybe do some push-ups, but nothing more. One thing I noticed right off the bat is how the monitors were constructed. Thick, textured plastic leads to the wall, locking each one of them in place. They're hardwired into the electrical system, the plugs being reinforced and grounded behind the wall. There's a small vent in the ceiling doing its damnedest to minimize the musty odor of the place. The toilet is what I expect, stainless steel and industrial, but at least it's clean. The door gives me pause, thick steel and with a slot in the middle. If the project takes off, maybe we'll look into making the workspace more comfortable, Adrian offers. Not like you could make it any less so. But hey, 20K makes it seem a lot bigger than it is, am I right? I replied. Meals are served 3 times a day. We've not found any dietary restrictions in our research on you, but if you have any, feel free to let us know. You may keep your cellular device, but usage in most cases will be seen as contrary to the rules outlined in the contract. Once daily, you will be expected to give a report on what you're seeing on the monitors. Attention to detail is key, Adrian explains. Okay, So this is kind of like a night trap meets escape room situation, I say, sitting down in a small computer chair, looking at the bank of various monitors. There's that attention to detail we're looking for. Watch the monitors, Nathan, Adrian says, closing the steel door. Want to know what I'm feeling? Joy. Yeah, everything is grimy and eerie as hell, but it's supposed to be. I'm alpha testing something or other, an immersive horror game maybe. I light up a cigarette, and I immediately notice two things. The first is that all the monitors are showing 3 different places, about a half dozen scenes apiece, give or take. Second's just how varied these screens are. Some are crystal clear, some are antiques, but all are behind a layer of almost imperceptible bulletproof glass. How do I know it's bulletproof glass? I don't, but it's clear, can't scratch it, can't leave a scorch mark on it. Most of the monitors are dull. Fast food place, gas station, inside of a house. After a while, though, someone comes home, nice-looking lady, early 30s or so, smartly dressed, coming home late at night. I've been watching paint dry for hours. I'm instantly drawn to anything resembling action. The hell am I doing here, I say, frustrated as I watch her through an impeccable screen. The house is dark. Her kitchen lights obscure the background. Shadows play like feral cats in her McMansion. I yawn, wondering when dinner is, or for that matter, what time it is. Then I see it on one of the older monitors. It could just be glitches from the ancient tech, but I swear it's a pair of eyes. It's subtle. Well done. It makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, but as quickly as they appear, they're gone. The woman turns, looking to where the apparition once was. She does her fridge door. As she does, her fridge door closes, whether its own accord or something else, that's unclear. Nice, I say, complimenting the scare. Theater or no, my heart's racing. Boring hours fly by like water in a dangerous lake. I'm brought something they assure me is dinner. Meatloaf, heavy on the loaf, nearly green beans, and cornbread I debate on keeping to whittle. At least the coffee's decent, given to me in a 2-liter carafe. I look away when the woman starts changing. I'm starting to think this was a live improv, and meeting someone after I've seen them naked seems gross. One lamp on her desk lights her as she places modest jewelry in expensive cases. There's a noise, a keening wail, and the woman turns around, seeing nothing. We're in the same boat. That is, until I look at a smaller black and white monitor. Standing in front of the woman is a rotten, lanky specter, torn asunder and enraged. "Right in front of you!" I scream, but she can't hear me. The objects in the room rattle. It's enough to scare the wits back into the woman. She bolts to her bedroom door. The thing, that mournful thing, grabs her by the arms. The sleeve of the woman's housecoat crumbles. The flesh beneath it begins to wither. She tries to pull free, but the grip of the specter is immovable. She hammers down a hand, and somehow after 3 frantic blows, the spirit lets go, growling in rage. The woman gets distance between herself and the ghost, but the undead doesn't bother to move. Small furniture flies like it's been caught in a tornado. Windows rattle and fracture, sending broken glass in waves onto the carpet. The woman takes a wrong step, lacerating her foot, and she holds onto a banister for support. The ghost laughs. The woman rises as if she's being picked up by one leg. She screams now, begging. Blood pours from her torn foot into her eyes. The spirit dangles her in midair. Her arm begins to twist and warp, snapping and breaking. I try to cover the speaker, but it's no use. I can hear her pain. For a moment, she's still, and then, defenseless, she falls. The feed on that set of monitors cuts out, and I'm jarred back to reality. Sweat beading, nails digging into the armrest of the cheap chair. Well done, guys. I'm not usually one for ghost stories, but that was damn near worth the time, I say to whoever's keeping tabs on me. A few more hours of staring at the screens, and there's a loud klaxon, jarring in the small room. The monitors shut off, and a pre-recorded voice says, "Now begins your 10-hour rest period." There's a handful of reasons I have trouble falling asleep. Not the least of which is the amount of coffee I've had. A close second are those noises. I've watched everything from Psycho, which is great, and a Serbian film, which is horrible. And not once has audio stuck with me so much. I'm woken by that same eardrum punching tone. Before I can brush the sleep from my eyes, a breakfast is shoved through the slot in the door. It's about as well made as dinner was. More coffee, and half a cigarette later, I hear a voice from an unseen speaker. "Hey, Nathan," the voice says. I can hear papers rustling. "That's me," I replied. "Hi, call me Percy. I'm asking you a few questions about what you watched the previous day. If you have any for me by any means, just let me know." The voice is level. It's friendly. "I was expecting Adrian, to be honest," I said. Percy laughs. This is a little below his pay grade. I'm just a guy working a job, like yourself. Bit nicer digs. I'm also not making $2K a day. I smile. So, what do you want to know?" I ask. "Well, I'd like for you to give me your overall impression of what you've seen, with particular attention to things that stood out, or may have seemed odd," Percy replied. "The format's neat. You think you get obnoxious, but those actors you hired, those effects, they make it worthwhile. I cut down a little on the dead air, though. The ghosts were scary, especially the wounding around the face. Usually, unique is probably the right word. Second effect blew me away. One thing, though, why did the ghost let go when the lady hit her? Didn't make any sense. Maybe if she hit it with, like a Bible or something. But as is, I don't know, kind of killed the vibe. Seemed a little lazy, or I guess silly," I explained. "Good catch, Nate. I'll have the higher-ups have a look into that." "Not a bad way to earn a few grand, huh?" Percy replied. "It'd be better if I wasn't hanging around with the ghosts of my own farts. That vent isn't doing a damn thing," I joke. The next 3 days go on in much the same way. I scan the monitors till something spooky happens, and do my best to point all the plot holes and stupid things I find. Not that there's much to pick apart. The variety alone makes things worthwhile. I'm seeing ghosts, demons, a couple of slasher villain types, a handful of different creatures despite the sponge baths and stale air. It's a dream job. But I wouldn't be posting here if the dream didn't turn into a nightmare. Day 5 shows me what this place is really about. Breakfast comes the same as always. A dish I dub grey eggs, due to their color and my love of good portmanteau. I answer some questions, and the last thing I watched, some kind of monster fight club, seemed way too action-oriented, more like fantasy than horror, really. And I get ready for another day. My selection consists of an empty barn, a deep forest, and... "Adrian, I said in the interview, no AI bullshit. I'm out. Open the door, and if you want your 20K back, you could see me in court. I'm not going to be part of the downfall of art," I say. No reply. My issue is, I'm recognizing one of the places I'm watching on a set of monitors. Kumar's Comics. Now, I'm not much of a geek, but I've been known to buy a comic or two, and while I'm not in there every day, I know the owners well enough. Kumar and Jasprit Patel, a little over middle-aged, and kind of folks that truly love what they do. There's no way other than some kind of generative special effects that I'm watching them. "Guys, I'm serious," I say. I try to sound enraged, but I hear the anxiety in my voice. "It's 20K, I whisper to myself, justifying the tossing of my artistic morals to the wind. The more I watch, the more people I know I see. The more I'm actually impressed. I ain't saying anything good about AI, but if I didn't know better, I'd swear I was actually watching cameras hidden in the shop. The longer I watch, the more I think that this can't just be some kind of special effect. I try to shake the thought, but as the hours slowly tick by, it's all I can think about. But what can I do? How could I prove things one way or another? My hand starts to move towards my phone. Plan forming. The second I grab it, a loudspeaker, distorted voice hits me with like a slap in the face. Nathan, do you know much about firing squads? Adrian said, his voice calm. No, why? I stuttered. In any firing squad, one man is given a rifle loaded with a blank. None of them know who. The reason why is that certain actions carry a weight, one that's too heavy to carry for most, no matter how noble the intention. It leaves that sliver of doubt that maybe you didn't really do anything. It's how most members of a firing squad sleep at night. If you make that phone call, it's only going to make things harder for you. Cling to that doubt. Cling to it like a life raft, Adrian explains. What are you saying? I asked, panicked. As little as possible. For your sake. And I have to remind you, using your device to communicate is against the rules of your contract and will be dealt with, Adrian threatens. I feel like I'm on the edge of a cliff. On one hand, I know this is all just some game, spooking me out of this joint. But on the other, a lot of things aren't adding up. I dial the number, I hear the ring echo through the monitors. My heart drops, I feel sick to my stomach. My phone disconnects when I look down. I don't even see the 4 emergency calls only prompt, just a string of strange, illegible characters. I hear Adrian sigh, then the speaker cuts out. A few seconds later, the industrial toilet sink combination starts spewing water. It goes on for minutes, soaking everything in the room and leaving about 3 inches of standing water. I'm shivering and scared, and I understand how truly fucked I am. Watch the monitors, Nathan. You may not understand, but you're helping to save life as we know it, Adrian demands. What else can I do? The day slowly trickles by. Every customer, every shadow makes my heart stop. Around 11 p.m., Kumar and Jasprit begin to close down the shop. I think maybe they're safe. Just another of the feeds where nothing happens. No one likes being proven wrong, myself included. The door wasn't locked. A short, stocky man in a dragging raincoat and beat-up fedora walks in. Sorry, buddy, store's closed. Open up bright and early tomorrow, though, Kumar says. The man ignores him. The stranger, faded plaid coat, catches on a set of action figures, knocking them over. Sir, show a little more care, please, Jasprit says, nicer than necessary. The stranger laughs mockingly. I catch an angle of his face. Pale, rotund, full of small lesions. Look almost like burns. But as he grins, I see it. Each of his teeth are small clusters of wires. Get out. Come on, fucking run! I scream at the screen. But of course they can't hear me. I know what this guy is, or at the very least what he's capable of. I can't just sit here. What choice do I have? Yesterday I probably have said he's the worst thing I've ever seen. He's not really scary. His gimmick seems tacky. The thought makes me sick to my stomach. The callousness I viewed people's trauma with. I vomit. The noise it makes in the standing water makes me retch a second time. Okay, Dick Tracy, it's time to get out of my store before I call the cops. You have 10 seconds, Kumar says in a commanding tone. The stranger snickers again, then turns to Kumar and his wife. I don't speak Hindi, but the squat man does. What he says shocks Kumar enough to pick up the phone and dial 911. But of course there's no dial tone. The lights flicker, then dim, then go out completely. Kumar and Jasprit use their phones as the light, trying to find their way to the door. They reach it, but it doesn't budge. Kumar begins to rattle the door. There's an electric arcing sound, then above them is a twisted grin made of arcing wire. I don't catch much of the violence. By the time the stranger sinks his teeth into Kumar, they both drop their phones. The feed cuts out. I feel lightheaded, like nothing is real. But it is. All of it. I just watched people I know get killed by a C-list urban legend. I don't sleep. By the time I hear Percy, I'm staring angrily at the wall. Hey, I got about 10 seconds to talk. You need to think about this like getting drafted into a world war. It sucks. It's going to change you, but it's for the fate of the world, Percy says, his voice panicked. Why the hell are you doing this? Why are you killing people? I screamed. We're not. Every place you watched is the result of months of research, and even then, it doesn't always pan out. But the higher-ups, they don't fuck around, okay? Do your time, get out. Don't let anything get in the way of that, Percy pleads. From then on, things don't feel interesting or exciting. Knowing what I know, the violence hits home. It fucks with my head. The worst are the stupid ones, the kind of things I'd share with my family for the sole purpose of mocking the writer, something about a creature or a spirit that can be accurately described as cringeworthy, taking someone's life. It's shocking and dismal. Then there's the cell itself. After the first day of standing, water spots of mold and veins of mildew start to develop on the wall. A couple of days after that, I got a cough that won't quit. It's my second concern, beyond what I believe is a case of trench foot. Things are miserable. They're torture, really. By day 10, it's all I can do to focus on the screens in front of me. I'm running a fever. One of my toes is turning a foul shade of green. That morning's breakfast comes with a familiar-looking stack of papers. I laugh, then cough. And I see blood in the phlegm. It's a contract. Another 2 weeks of my life to have the water drain and some antibiotics. Of course, there's another $20,000 in it for me, but at this point, I'd burn the goddamn money just to get out of here. Truth be told, I don't know if I'm going to last another 4 days without medical attention and air without spores in it. I sign. Of course I do. It's not like I have a choice. If it was a case of being shot, maybe I'd be brave enough to face the music instead, but the thought of dying a slow, infected death in a sodden cell terrifies me. There's no happy ending here. I'm still in this cell. Day 13, in fact. First day since the 5th I've seen a familiar place. My cell. It sits perched in the corner of the room, looking down at me from the ceiling. I can't see it when I look, but on an old green-tinted monitor, it lurks. I can't make out much of it besides what I think is a rusted old army helmet. Its long brass teeth reflect the scant light in the cell. Water's flooding my prison as I finish typing this. Punishment for reaching out to all of you. It's my cry for help, my scream to the void to try and figure out some way out of my situation. But this is also my warning. Something is happening to the world, something big and chaotic and worse than anything that we've seen before. Rules are breaking, logic is failing, things aren't what they seem, and someone somewhere out there is keeping an eye on all of these threads and the YouTube comments, looking for those people that know what they're looking for. Those of us who live and breathe urban legends, ghost stories. Watch your back, guys. I don't know what else to say. Sometimes people really do die for no reason. And I don't mean a senseless killing or a tragic accident. I mean that sometimes the human body shuts down for reasons beyond our current medical knowledge. You know, we know that it starts either in the heart or the autonomic nervous system, but beyond that, we in the medical field, we're stumped. I'm an emergency physician working in a major city. I'd like to break the silence on the issue, but that would be career suicide, so I'll do it anonymously here. It happens more than you might think. Young, healthy woman goes to sleep, just doesn't wake up the next day. Middle-aged man collapses on the sidewalk, and we always come up with an excuse of how it happened. The woman's doctor will dig into her medical history, find out she admitted to doing cocaine at a party in college. Or the middle-aged man's grandfather died of a heart attack, so he probably had a congenital defect that led to sudden cardiac death. Problem is, a heart attack and sudden cardiac death, those are two different things. And an overweight 80-year-old smoker having a heart attack doesn't explain why his 45-year-old half-marathon running grandson's heart just simply stopped beating one day on his way to the corner store. It's so much easier to explain away the problem if they have a current medical condition. Oh, he has diabetes. That's why his heart stopped. Never mind that his diabetes was well managed and he followed his medication regimen regularly. Oh, she had the flu, which we often forget kills people every year. And yeah, it does. But not normally 17-year-old varsity volleyball players with no underlying health problems. Sometimes the sudden death occurs and causes an accident, which makes covering up the real cause easier. I mean, heck, we don't even need to cover it up. Half the time we don't know about it. I remember learning about the condition back in med school during my pathology rotation. I was naturally pretty good at this subfield and considered specializing in it for a time before going the emergency medicine route. The attending took a liking to me and asked me to take a look at something. I'd like to say I was in the morgue doing extra credit because I was such a badass student, but I mean, honestly, if memory serves, I was practicing rectal exams on my cadaver because I hated them and I didn't want to freak out in front of class again. I found the pathologist in the adjacent room looking at the nude corpse of a 38-year-old woman, a Y incision across her torso. She had bruises and lacerations on her face from an airbag. No damage to her hands or wrists, though, which sometimes happens when airbags deploy, but isn't consistent enough to be suspicious alone. She also had a bruise stretching from her left shoulder across her chest, a common injury caused by seatbelts. I was told the autopsy revealed her spleen had been contused, again, something consistent with seatbelt-related injuries. The only problem was that was the only internal damage the doctor could find. Her lungs, her heart, her brain, they showed no significant pathology. She hadn't bled out internally. Analysis of her blood showed elevated levels of troponin, a marker often used to diagnose heart attacks, but no infarcts were found in her heart. Witnesses said that she went limp before her car swerved off the road. Perhaps she fainted, you might think, just because she lost consciousness before crashing. That doesn't mean thousands of people are dropping dead every year from an unknown cause. I mean, after all, her autopsy also revealed she had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.03%, so that probably contributed to her loss of consciousness, right? Well, now, you are thinking like a doctor. Why consider the facts when you can neatly file this away with the many alcohol-related accidents that occur every year? A BAC of 0.03%. What a joke. That's well under the legal limit, as I'm sure you know, and with no other drugs or even prescribed medications in her system, the likelihood that the amount of alcohol found in a small beer knocked this woman out, that's just absurd to me. She had a history of enjoying a few drinks each week, so it's not like this was her first time. But her friends and family said she had been under a lot of stress lately and wasn't sleeping well, so the hospital was able to latch that on as an explanation. A little bit of beer, plus a whole lot of stress, poor sleep. That can make someone lose consciousness at the wheel, right? If that were the case, everyone I went to med school with would be dead 100 times over. And heck, not just med school students, the whole damn country's experiencing an epidemic of stress and poor sleep, but that's more comforting to believe this explanation than the alternative. Let's ignore, of course, the fact her body didn't have enough damage to account for her death. I noticed the Frankenstein cut across the woman's scalp that meant the pathologist had examined her brain. I asked if there was any damage to it. He said there wasn't, and asked me what I thought he should do. I told him to re-examine the brain for any neurological reasons the woman might have suddenly fainted. He said he wouldn't. And when I asked him why, he replied, because if I don't find anything, it draws attention to the fact that she died of nothing. Leave just enough ambiguity, the family can make peace with it. Those words stuck with me. You've heard about this unnamed, unspoken condition before, too. Well, it happens to celebrities. It makes the news. Thankfully, the media love dragging famous people's names through the mud. So when they die of nothing, you hear about every unhealthy habit they ever had and every drug they ever took. The cause of death is always some horrible celebrity behavior that us normal people don't engage in. So we don't have to worry. And it cracks me up. It cracks me up when the media outlets all pick different explanations to run with. Remember that TV star we all watched growing up who died a few years back? Engaged in some rigorous physical activity beforehand. That must have contributed to his heart failure. Except people with weak hearts usually don't do rigorous activities. They follow a pretty clear and predictive decline in physical ability before dying. And people who get heart attacks usually get them during the activity, not after. Oh, it can happen. But generally speaking, if a bit of plaque is going to break off and block an artery, it's going to do it when your heart rate spikes sharply, not when it's coming down. I also heard it was the activity combined with overheating from his hot tub, or no, it was that he actually passed out first and then he drowned. No, wait, it was everyone's favorite culprit, drugs. And the reality is no one knows how he died. Martial arts star, known for his extreme physical fitness, gets rushed to the hospital with what they said was swelling in the brain. But I've also heard he died of an allergic reaction to a headache medicine or water toxicity due to the liquid diet he was on. Heck, I've even heard he died because he ate hashish, which is a concentrated form of marijuana that has been linked to 0 deaths, or, 1, I suppose, if you believe it killed this guy. What we do know about the condition is that it often causes a sense of dread before setting in. Full-blown panic attacks are seen in roughly 50% of cases. And before you comment about how panic attacks can't kill you, let me ask you this. How do you know? How do you know a heart attack isn't just a panic attack that kills you? Their symptoms are often the same. Maybe an aneurysm. Maybe that's what happens when your panic rises your blood pressure so high it compromises the lining of the blood vessels in your brain. Remember that pop star from 15 years back? He died because his doctor wouldn't say no to him and kept giving him drugs, and then the doctor got in trouble. But what was the drugs he was taking? It was something to help him sleep because he suffered from terrible fits of anxiety. So did the drugs really kill him? This is the hardest pill to swallow. This is the reason not just the medical community, but the whole world at large has agreed to this cooperative lie. Your anxiety is right. You can just die for no reason. And it's not a conspiracy. It's not something us doctors cooked up to control the masses. Everyone knows it's on some level. We all know life is fragile. It's random. We all know that those sudden bouts of dizziness, tightness in your chest, that feeling of dread, it can't just be benign. They're warning us of something biological that we don't yet understand. Why in the name of God would we evolve to experience panic for no reason? But there is a reason, chronic anxiety. And do you really believe that? Do you really believe that the fix evolution gave us to deal with stress over long periods is to imitate a heart attack instead of, make us better at handling stress? Yeah, but my doctor said, yeah, exactly, your doctor said, and I'm here to tell you that your doctor's either wrong or he's lying to you. It's not out of malicious intent, it's to help people live their lives normally without a constant fear looming over them while we research this issue and try to understand it better and hopefully find a treatment for it. I was one of the doctors that was wrong, okay? I believe the lie myself. I pushed the truth down somewhere inside me, choosing not to fully understand what the pathologist had tried to teach me in medical school. It's been mostly an essay so far, so let me try my hand at a bit of narrative to show you exactly what broke the spell for me and what woke me up from the illusion, so to speak. Abby was a 26-year-old female. She was admitted to my hospital emergency department at 1:30 a.m., reporting shortness of breath, chills, shaking, and tachycardia. Since any symptoms that can be heart-related are assumed to be so until proven otherwise, she was sent back to me right away. Her heart rate was 128. It was not great for sitting down, but to be honest, that's roughly what you'd experience in a light jog. Blood pressure was 145/90. It's not great, but working in an ER, I'd seen much worse on people who walked out the next day. So tell me what you do for work, I said, as I applied the electrodes for an EKG to her skin. She hadn't requested a female doctor and was perfectly comfortable being shirtless with me. She just wanted to find out what was wrong with her. I'm a paralegal, she said quickly between breaths. Yeah, that's hard work, is that true? It may seem weird to have casual conversations with someone in the throes of a panic attack, but casual conversation focusing on simple, familiar topics that can ease people through them. Also, no, I've never read this in the medical literature. I believe talking can help regulate their breathing, return their CO2 levels back to normal. Can be. I like it. She laughed. Probably the cognitive dissonance of making a positive statement while feeling so terrible. It was good to release a little tension. I smiled at her and applied the last pad. I turned on the machine and it began spewing out a paper readout of spikes and troughs, telling me all the states of Abby's heart. I said, all right, well, I'm going to make sure that your heart's looking... yeah, there. Yeah. I don't see anything here that really concerns me. In fact, your heart's pretty strong. That's what I would expect to see in someone around 18 years old. Well, no, because their heart still has a little developing to go, but this is peak performance here. Are you an athlete? I like to run, she said. With each passing second, her breaths became farther apart. That'll do it. I've always wanted to run a marathon. I think I could physically, but it's a time commitment. I don't think I could fit the training into my schedule. I've never done anything like that. It's just, I do a few miles every day or two. Her voice sounded tired now, almost drunk. I mean, that happens sometimes to people when they come down from a panic attack. And the adrenaline goes but leaves the endorphins to make the person feel high. I glanced at the pulse oximeter on her finger, about to stop the EKG when I noticed her heart rate was now 60. That can't be right. I grabbed her wrist, and in the 15 seconds it took me to check her pulse, her heart rate had dropped to 40. I called for a nurse. I glanced at the readout from the EKG and saw it had changed from one belonging to a young runner to one that would be a good candidate for a pacemaker. Hey, Abby, did you take anything before arriving in the hospital for your anxiety? Your heart rate's a little low, so I'm going to give you a medicine to... I read heart rate 30 on the pulse. Oh, dear God. I don't remember if I said that out loud, or I hope I only thought it, but I don't know if that would have changed anything. She already knew something was wrong. Her eyes widened as she reached for my hand. Her heart rate shot back up to 60 briefly as she struggled to keep her head up before falling back onto the examination table. The paper continued to print from the EKG, the spikes and troughs cutting sharply to a flat line that would stretch on forever if I didn't turn the machine off. I realized I was clutching her hand in mine. I let go of it and hung off the end of the table, limp, dead. Last year, Robert Bergman moved into the house next door, and when he introduced himself to us, my ears rang loudly, told like alarm bells. You know that feeling? That fight or flight response? Strange, given that I knew nothing about him. Rob was a tall man, topping out at 6'5", wore a glum look on his thin lips half covered by a shaggy gray beard. Beneath that bleak expression, he wore loose-fitting clothes, green leather jacket, flared black trousers like some time-displaced prog rocker. My new neighbor looked a little odd, no doubt about that, but I still wasn't sure why he unnerved me. Have you noticed that he always limps? Asked my friend Steve a couple of months ago. We were passing a football back and forth, half watching my oddball neighbor mow the lawn, warring with the frost-tipped glasses. I shrugged, rolled the ball back across the slippery gravel. I don't know, man. I try to steer clear of him. 10 more months until I move to uni. Isn't Rob friends with your dad? Steve asked. You'll probably end up seeing him sometimes. I sighed. Don't remind me. He chuckled. You know, Danny, his right leg always seems to bulge a little more than the other. I groan, and once again, we return to Steve's podcast, Rob's Knob. My friend tittered and let the football come to a stop. I mean, look at him. He's carrying a ton of weight around in the right trouser leg, right? He has to be. Why else would he be limping? For literally any other reason, Steve, I replied. About that night in February, he asked, voice suddenly quieter, as if he worried that Rob, over the roar of the lawnmower, might hear him. I shook my head, brow creased slightly. We were drunk. Steve shrugged. Sure, but it was real. Whatever happened, it woke us both. It was Rob's cat, I croaked unconvincingly. Shuddering, I recalled the midnight awakening that followed my birthday outing with my friends. Afterwards, with too much alcohol in his blood to drive home, Steve had crashed in my room. It wasn't a cat, my friend whispered. You know what we saw. I don't, I said meekly. And I didn't. But I knew that Steve was right. It was no cat. Cats don't make whatever sound we heard. Deep, bubbling, and ear-battering. A deafening noise more like that of the broth on the hob rather than a living thing. The startling groan yanked Steve and me out of our bed, sent us scuttling towards my window, knocking liquor-fueled legs. The strongest bottle of booze in the world didn't cause joint hallucinations. As Steve said, I knew what we'd both seen, something poking over the wooden fence. In Robert Bergman's garden, there stood something tall, shaped like nothing earthly, wearing the night like a shawl. It, whatever it may have been, came from somewhere else. I know that, and I know it wasn't a trick of the dim moonlight. It wasn't Rob's washing rotary, folding up into a thin pole. It wasn't an open shed door. It was alive. And it spun, then shot at frightening speed towards the patio doors of Rob's home. The shape didn't rise and fall naturally like a person, but disjointedly like nothing I'd ever seen. I know I'm not crazy, Steve said. I see it in your eyes, Danny. Over recent weeks, I've been thinking about that conversation. It wasn't until last Saturday, however, that I faced the truth. Faced something more than an indiscernible shadow over a garden fence. I threw a house party whilst my parents were away, and Steve got himself into a little trouble. Not a habit of his, but that last can of Scrumpy Jack really did a number on his tongue, made him say something regrettable to Terry Roston. And we don't talk to Terry Roston. Don't even invite him to parties, but he always shows up. Frightens everybody, and he delights in doing so. Hours after the party ended, Terry came back. He knocked Steve into his back, flattened my dumbfounded friend the second he answered the door. I was standing in the middle of the living room with a clear view of the lobby through the doorway. Clear view of that maliciously smiling classmate, who to me had always looked like something more than a peer, more than a boy. Terry was bulky, too bulky for an 18-year-old. His form seemed to fill the hallway, and that was why I simply watched as the horror began, as Terry Roston, smiling at me, repeatedly slammed each of his fists into Steve's face. And whilst he did, he kept his head twisted to the side, kept his wrenched gaze locked onto mine. As I said, he delighted in frightening people. Delighted in horrifying me with the torture of waiting to meet the same fate. Still, I surprised myself when Steve's sputters started to quieten. One of my feet lurched forward, and I prepared to challenge the haunting ghoul in the entryway. Terry took a turn at surprising me, however, by stopping short of taking my friend's life. And it wasn't that the monster had seen me take a tentative step forward. It was that he heard what I'd heard. That familiar bubbling sound of bottomless depth. Terry snarled and twisted, clearly ready to turn his fists into a new victim. But he changed upon seeing something beyond my field of view. Immediately shrank from a hefty, haunting man into a teenager. A boy. Something less. I finally saw the brute as he had always been. Minuscule. Then I I didn't see Terry at all, as his ragdoll body was yanked with a series of snaps out of sight, yanked towards the front door. I screamed because Terry's body had disappeared in a split second, screamed because he hadn't, screamed, and just when I felt the scream die, as the last puff of air left my lungs, there came a second startling horror. Terry's body flew back across the entryway, falling alongside an unconscious Steve who lay on the floorboards. The horrid boy lay in a broken tangle of red, strained limbs, but still clung to life, gasped for help. With my breath held, I found myself unable to scream a second time, so I simply stood and I watched as a shadow washed across the far wall of the hallway. The shadow I recognized from that night back in February was joined by floorboards creaking under some unimaginable, unthinkable weight, one that moved with a stilted, janky motion. When the shadowy thing stepped past the edge of the lounge's doorframe, finally revealing itself to me, my jaw hung. There came an unclothed leg, the bare calf and thigh of something longer than an ordinary limb, and at the end of this alien appendage, rather than a foot, was a human hand. One with fingers flat against the floor. Into view came left and right legs of human proportions and design, 3 naked limbs moving like some macabre tripod, human legs swung through the air, propelled forward by the bending third leg, which emerged from Rob's groin in place of a member. The nude, 3-legged creature walked through my parents' hallway, still lit sufficiently by the glow of the street lamp at the end of my driveway. It was Rob, of course. I had always known that. I had always known that my neighbor wasn't right, wasn't like us, which is a fucking understatement, I know, as the man had a hand-footed leg instead of a penis. "No!" Terry screamed, hands raised defensively, mouth full of blood and regret. But it was too late. Robert Bergman, the man that I'd both correctly and incorrectly judged, lowered himself onto his 2 human legs. Then he lifted the third, the inexplicable limb protruding from his groin, lifted it over the brutalized body of Terry Roston for merely a moment before hammering it into the monster's face. The hand covered Terry's mouth and nose, and the wide-eyed boy squirmed uselessly under the full might of Rob's third leg. Under the monstrous fingers that shut Terry from the world, shut his nostrils and lips so that he would slowly and painfully suffocate. Minutes later, my neighbor lifted his third leg, uncovered the brute who had so nearly murdered my friend, nearly come for me too. Rob scooped Terry's body into his alien limb as if it were an enormous talon. Then the inhuman thing turned towards the door, swaying restlessly in the wind. I don't know what the 3-legged thing did with Terry Roston's body. I don't know whether the police will ever find out why that boy went missing. Before my neighbor limped home, he looked at me, frozen teenager standing in his own piss puddle. Looked at me with those glistening gray pupils, dark eyes that nevertheless shone brighter than the black. That's about the only thing I know for sure about Robert Bergman. There was a garage sale in my area, which kind of blew my mind because in my newly minted life as an adult woman, 4th year of college and all, I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen one in my waking life. I started a bucket list filled with some rather plain activities as my newest attempt to fight the creeping depersonalization that plagued me for the last year or so. Once I saw the sale, I immediately added it to my list, then went there, crossed it off. The sale itself was pretty pathetic. Nothing I would ever do a double take for in a store. Nevertheless, I spotted a single cartridge for an N64 game that I hadn't seen before, and wanting to come back with some sort of trophy, I snagged it. The old lady running the show squinted with her glasses on while I held it out in front of her. "Must be Marty's," she said, looking rather confused. $10? Cue that stock cha-ching sound, and off I went home to my half of the apartment that I was sharing with Kelsey. Kelsey, with the fantastic self-discipline, the great diet, the great job, my true foil and polar opposite. I entered. She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and measuring her food because being hot was its own full-time job, and I respected it. I lingered for 5 seconds so she knew to ask about my day. "How was your day, Sadie?" she eventually asked. I leaned over the dining table chair and said, "I went to a garage sale." "Uh-huh. Why?" "It was on my bucket list." "Why do you have a bucket list? You're like a baby." "Because, like, life? It's fleeting, and like the human experience, or whatever." She squinted. "Is it an actual physical list?" "Word doc, mainly," I said back, and then some scribbles in my notebook. I couldn't tell if she was impressed or confused. "Okay." I thought twice about whether I should flash her the cartridge as proof of purchase, but it didn't seem that she found the venture as impressive as I did, so I opted against it. "Gonna go veg out in my room," I said, skirting off. "Have fun in there," she said. Never liked her saying that all the time. It felt pervy. I closed the door to my bedroom. Sparkling lights hung across the wall to celebrate the arrival of winter. Amidst the cozy hideaway, with too many throw pillows, was the piece de resistance. The small wooden TV stand in the corner, with CRT TV on top and N64 tucked neatly below. Did I ever play it? Nope. Did it make me happy to look at? Yes. My usual special dead-eyed scrolling between the apps while eating Takis and smoking a bowl lasted me about 30 minutes before a familiar dread kicked in. I went to the old TV, cleared off some dust, turned off most of the lights, leaving only the wall one twinkling, and checked to see if the old console, product of an era I just missed and yet still had some bizarre nostalgia for, was set up properly. When all seemed well, I grabbed the cartridge, game titled Covington's Redemption, blew into it once for good measure, and stuck it into the console. Switched it on. After a few seconds of lag, static lines flickering across the screen, indicating something was happening, then, in big blue letters, the title screen appeared. Covington's Redemption. Press start. I pressed the button, and immediately I was met with a presence sitting across the table in a small kitchen. Wrinkled lines marked his face. He had a suit on. Looked like he was a middle-aged man. "What's your name?" he asked. A dialogue box appeared for me to type a response. I used the joystick to painfully, slowly select the letters LeBron. I inhaled, smoking with my free hand. "Thank you for visiting me, LeBron." "You are so welcome," I said out loud, taking another puff and coughing. "I can't believe I'm not out shooting threes right now." "Yes," I talked to myself, so sue me. "It appears you're coming to me at a dire time in your life," he continued. "For show." Smoke rings. "Perhaps you came here thinking I could send you on a grand quest." "Word." "The truth is, I'm not who you think I am." He stood up from his table. "I'm not your quest giver. Rather, I'm a lawyer named Larry with psychic powers." I started laughing, here to battle cruelty in this twisted world. "Oh my god. This game is fucking dog shit," I said, beaming. I heard Kelsey's bedroom door close, whether in response to my noise or just a random occurrence, I wasn't sure. "And I'm grateful," his dialogue continued, "that you followed the spark of curiosity within you, the spark of instinct, for it was the right call." Dramatic pause. "For there is something coming after you. And if the fixed course of time isn't disrupted via psychic interference, your life will be taken in 3 days." And I had to be honest, melodramatic suit guy was fun enough, but my TikTok-trained attention span was starting to waver. "If you're ready," he went on, "I could take you to my vision room so that you could see the gravity of the situation for yourself." I pressed A to continue because I was high enough that cutting him off felt rude. The scene shifted to a dark back room with not much else in it other than a bulletin board. Larry grabbed his head and focused, while a swirling sound effect played. He clenched his face, fingers pressed against his temples, until finally, an image manifested on the board. The photo of another character, a woman, trail of blood pooling from her mouth, eyes lifeless. "This is the condition you'll be found in 3 days," he said. I squinted. My reddened eyes, in tandem with the slowed brain processing power, took a while to digest the image. The girl had a beige, cable-knit sweater, not unlike the one I was wearing. Crescent moon tattoo on her inner wrist, just like mine. Blonde hair, loose, brushed out waves. Huh. Outdated 3D model aside, she looked a lot like me. Like a lot. His dialogue box stayed frozen, awaiting my button press to continue. Putting my pipe on the counter, I grabbed my phone, reread the cartridge's title, Covington's Redemption, and Googled it. No relevant results. I double-checked the spelling, added more words to the search like N64 or video game. Still nothing. I put everything down, rushed to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, stared at my face in the mirror. You're okay. Back to my room, I could feel my heart start to bounce in my chest. I re-grabbed the controller and let his dialogue continue. "LeBron, if the site isn't making it clear, you're going to be murdered." I'm just tripping out. "To stop the perilous train barreling towards you, it's going to require a few key things," he said. He struck a pose, fist clenched in front of his face. "You're going to need to be cunning." "The fuck, man?" I whispered. A wistful, pixelated look off to the side. "You're gonna need to be brave." I just need to breathe. "And finally, you're going to need to overcome your personal demons. Put them to bed once and for all." He steadied himself. "What I suggest first and foremost is..." I turned the N64 off. It's a bad trip. I needed to go to bed. So I did. Rallying together as many excuses in my head as needed for why this all just had a logical explanation and why I needed to call it a night early, amidst bouts of tossing and turning and sobriety creeping back in, I snuck in what felt like a fever dream of a nap. Eyes to the clock. 1 a.m. I rebooted the game. Take 2. Come on, normalcy. I was greeted with that same bulletin board, psychic lawyer man beside, and the image of the deceased girl, except this time, her clothes had changed. It still looked like me, just now dressed in the same jammies and Care Bear sleep shirt that I just put on. Feeling all sorts of fucked up, I finished reading Larry's note this time. "What I suggest first and foremost is that you pay close attention to your surroundings over the next 24 hours. Then he rested his head in his hands. "I grow weary." I tried to get anything more out of him, but he just kept repeating, "I grow weary," after that. Struggling to place if there was anything else immediate to do, and with exhaustion already swallowing me, I just turned the system off again and tried to dream away the cosmic dread. It was the next day, and after some truly terrible sleep, I was back at my university forcing myself into the routine of classes. Clutched in my hand was a small pocketbook for jotting down any noticings, as per the recommendations of one psychic Larry. My eyes shot from mark to mark in the hallway. People, students, with their micro-expressions, laughing at dumb shit or stressed out. I wasn't actually going to die, right? This was all just like, it was a joke or something, right? "Sadie!" I heard a familiar voice trail behind me, and then Connor fell into step beside me. Longtime friend. Reliable friend. Looked way too much like that nice guy from 13 Reasons Why. "Hey," I said. "Whoa," he said, looking at my face. "What?" "No, nothing." "No, what is it?" "Oh, it's just that, you look tired. And I know you're not supposed to say that to a woman, so I stopped before I said it. Yeah, the hive mind that is all women. I smiled, shrugged it off. It's fine, just I couldn't sleep. Shortly after, we were in our lecture hall for class. The professor rattled off about concentric zone theory, and I paid attention to my surroundings. Across the room, I spotted Bryson, my ex. My big dumb ex. We locked eyes. We ended on less than cordial terms. He wanted to open our relationship, and I granted him permission. He could sleep with anyone in the world but me. The notebook suddenly opened. I scribbled Bryson, spiteful polyamorous. Connor whispered, sneaking bites of his terrible-looking lunch. I know it's not my place to, give advice, but if you couldn't sleep because you were smoking a lot of pot, then you should monitor that. I mean, I know that it can impact anxiety and motivation, and my eyes fixed on the boyish professor next. Professor Warden. A flicker of eye contact. Given my major, criminology, was his area of expertise, it wasn't a surprise that I'd had multiple classes with him already. My mind flashed to that choice encounter that we once had, making out in the closet in first year during my professor phase. The fun ended when he said, "Sorry, I can't," not with students, ironically delivered after sticking his tongue down my throat for 20 minutes. It was never brought up again. The memory faded, and I looked at Connor and nodded so he could feel heard while continuing his monologue. Pocket journal reopened. Professor Warden. Scared I'd get him fired 4 years later? I just think, Connor said, that if you tried to go cold turkey for even just 2 weeks, it could really... The hours whipped by without so much of a show for them. And then we were back in the hallway. And I was continuing once again to scan for any hints at the cause of my impending erasure. "So, what are you doing after this?" he asked me. "Probably just gonna hide away in my room." "Oh, there's a new bar by Sundale. I was thinking about checking it out. If you wanted to." "I'm really, low energy today, Con. Maybe another time." "Oh, yeah, for sure," he said. "Another time then." We split up. I gave him a wave, and he sheepishly scratched the back of his head and walked away. When he was out of sight, I secured my little notebook again. Connor. Wee bit obsessive? I scratched it out as soon as I finished writing it. Maybe just a bit too puppy dog for that, he was. I was about to close the notebook when I caught something in my peripheral. Someone peeking around the end of the hall, watching me, dressed in all black, hood pulled up over their head. My walk quickened into a run. I rounded the corner and saw... They were gone. I looked behind me, and then around, a little dazed. And then I wrote that down too. I arrived back at the apartment marred with sleeplessness. Kelsey was in the kitchen, meal prep, always, slicing and dicing so elegantly, too elegantly. "Hey," I said. "Hey, how was classes?" I stared, swish, swish, swish at the cucumber on the cutting board. "You're really good at that." "Good at what?" "Cutting with that knife?" "Oh, thanks." "Where'd you get your training?" Subtly left me. Knife training. "You mean my 2nd grade level cutting skills?" "Yeah, I got them by cooking for myself and not door-dashing every second meal to my apartment door." Kelsey wasn't having it, so I went to my room and booted up the game. Covington's Redemption title screen. I pressed the start button on my controller, and we were back. Psychic lawyer Leary was at the kitchen table, head in his hands. He looked like he'd been struggling. "Sustenance," he said, "in the form of crunchy bread with peanut butter spread atop. I need it if I'm going to continue with my visions." Was this motherfucker about to send me on a fetch quest? "LeBron, please," he continued. "Exit my quarters. I believe there's a store on this street that sells what I need to keep going." Ugh. I was finally able to control my character. I went up to Larry to see if he had any more dialogue. I received a paltry ... in response. I maneuvered out of Larry's place, down the steps, and onto a city street. I shifted down the block, spotted storefronts without clear entries. Ding. My phone IRL. I checked it. Connor again. Text popping up on screen. Hey, sorry if I came on too strong about the pot smoking thing. Back to the TV. Bizarre-looking strangers walked by, the sounds of my shuffling over gravel, until finally I spotted a store that I could actually enter. Carver's Diner. Before I made my way inside, I spotted something interesting in the corner of my eye. Someone peeked out from behind an alley about a block down. A character dressed in dark layers, black ski mask on. What the fuck? I shifted focus, directing myself to the alley to find, just like in real life, there was no one around the corner. The music in the game started skipping, the ambient outdoor sounds paired with something new, and off-key choral rise, ghost-like voices coalescing into an uncomfortable hum. I stepped down the alley, the hem growing louder, my hair standing on end. I didn't like this fucking game. And as I did step, I clocked a small square panel in the wall. I removed it, ducked down, and crawled inside. I inched through the passageway, slow movements in the crawl space leading to an eventual resolve. A room. Lanterns piercing the dark. I spotted a chessboard on the ground. All the little pieces caught fire, all except for one. There was a statue of a winged, crown-bearing figure. Hollow eyes with a serpent coiled around one arm, and a staff gripped in the other. I looked over to spot me. The same me that I'd seen on Larry's bulletin board as an image, but now fully formed, strung up against the wall, bound lifeless, with bloody tears shedding. As I tried to keep a grip on my own sanity, I spotted the words, "Not yet," appearing from a text box that I think came from the statued figure before the screen exploded into static, white noise, distortion, and then cut to black altogether, with a single new dialogue box appearing. Anniversary. And then I was right back in front of Carver's Diner again. This time, traumatized as all hell, I simply went into the store while scribbling horrifying, demonic shit into my pocketbook. Still in the game, I watched Larry happily chomp down on his peanut butter and toast. It was the one item at Carver's that I had enough in-game cash to purchase. Sighing, I sparked up IRL. Kelsey called me earlier to join her in watching The Girlfriend. I was now in my holing up in my space and ghosting my roommate era. I continued pressing the A button as the psychic lawyer kept biting, new dialogue boxes appearing that simply said, over and over again. "Exceptional," he said, finally done, face flushing like an Animal Crossing character. "Simply exceptional." He wiped his face with his suit sleeve, and then seemingly locked the fuck in. 2 days. I have a little over 2 days now. "I'm aware," I said aloud. "You did what I told you, didn't you?" he said. "You've paid attention?" "Yeah, fuck, Jesus." "What I find very important," he continued, "in pursuing justice is understanding motives, not getting thrown off by distractions or red herrings." Kelsey opened the door, completely ignoring our please knock policy. She flopped onto my bed. "You're being antisocial as fuck," she said. Larry's dialogue continued on. I tried to pause it, but none of the buttons worked. "Privacy, please. I'm just feeling a little low-key today," I said. "You're squandering your potential, Missy." She scrolled on her phone. "I would do so much with my life if I had rich parents." Amidst the distraction, my eyes only briefly caught some of Larry's words. "Re-examining. Digging deeper." "You're playing old video games?" Kelsey asked, intrigued. "Is this Mario Kart? Does this look like Mario Kart?" Larry, meanwhile, energized, brought it back to his secret room with the bulletin board again. "Let's start with another one of my visions." Face drawn tight, fingers pressed to his temples again, having Kelsey there felt akin to when your parents walk in during a movie sex scene. An image appeared on the board, an animated close-up of a mouth opening, a forkful of lettuce being lifted to its teeth. The animation continued looping. I can now see the mouth of your killer, he said proudly. The fuck am I supposed to do with this? Oh, murder mystery game, said Kelsey, plopping down to the ground beside me. Yeah, it's super fun, I said, beyond depressed. So obviously, killer likes salad, said Kelsey. I mean, yeah, but like, so what? We call that a hint, Sadie. Write it down. I sighed, slowly grabbing my pocketbook, flipping it to an empty page and scribbling into it with a pen. She ruffled my hair annoyingly and bounded off. God, what the fuck, dude? I said. Go outside, she called back. Touch grass. Use your trust fund baby privilege for good. Go easy on the ganja. I got up and shut the door. Back to Larry. So, he continued. Tell me, LeBron, does this mouth ring a bell for you? No. Tell me more about today, he said. And then, it just lingered on him. He stared at me, no input screen to painfully slowly type an answer into. Realizing we were far beyond reason now, I decided to talk directly to the TV. I mean, nothing crazy at first. Earlier today, the weirdest thing, some dude, watching me from the hallway. That said, I mean, in the game, he squinted. Never mind the insanity that the words I was speaking seemed to be translating. His expression at the game was worrisome. I rephrased. I mean, near your place, there was an alleyway and another creepy guy there was more... Anyway, then I saw some satanic shit. I don't know. The journey grows dangerous, he said. Yeah, no shit, man. He spent some time, fingers pressed to his lips, thinking. Should I leave? Or he finally landed on something. Go somewhere. Have a drink. Okay, I said. Near your place? I corrected again. Or in my area. In your area. God damn it. I grabbed my phone, text from Mom. Come home for dinner this week. It was one of a string of messages from her I hadn't responded to yet. Needed to get to that too. I texted Connor. Received a response back in 0.2 seconds. Then I headed out, striding past Kelsey, who was splayed out on the living room sofa watching TV. Where are you going? To touch grass. As I left, I fought the urge to scribble her name into my notebook. Salad is pretty universal, right? So, what do you think? Asked Connor from across our booth at the bar. Yeah, I mean, it's a bar, so that's cool. It was the place that he had pitched earlier today. He was the only person I knew who'd go out with me on a Wednesday night on short notice. They've got this, really cool cocktail. He flipped a page. I was thinking of trying it later. A server came by with our drinks. He smiled as she put them down. She left. I took a sip of the blue buck that he'd offered me before I got here. He knew my favorite, and I handed it to him. So, he continued as my eyes flitted from patrons to barkeep, paying attention, as always. You don't usually come out with me. I smiled. I just needed air, I think. Air and ambience. Didn't feel, I don't know, safe doing it alone. So you feel safe with me? He said, almost lighting up. and yeah, I said, dodging. Just wanting to try a new place out. People watch maybe. If that makes sense. More darting in my eyes. I tried to keep it subtle while cursing my 64-bit lawyer for putting me into this awkward situation. Silence. So, I'm worried about you. I'm fine. Please stop. Not about the weed smoking. I'll drop that. Thank you. But how you don't ever talk about I swallowed. He continued. And I'm sorry for even bringing it up, but we're friends, and I mean, we never discuss it, but I can tell it's weighing on you. It's not weighing on me. Your sister. Like, that's so, it's just the fact that you're trying to find yourself again, and I did say ambient night. It's fucked up. You know what happened to her? I just want you to know that I'm here for you as you try to, you know, move forward. Thanks, Connor, truly. I'm gonna go piss. I saw his expression shift as I got up and headed for the ladies' room. Inside, I felt my heart race a bit. I didn't need this right now. I steadied my breathing in front of the mirror. A memory flashed across my eyes. Waking up late to missed calls from everyone in my family. I was supposed to be with her that night. I left the bathroom. I spotted Connor still goofily cycling through the cocktails menu. My attention shifted to the bar's back area, past the mostly empty kitchen, where I saw another person in a ski mask, dressed in all black, peering through the back door that led outside, eyes fixed on me. Beyond the stirring mix of sensations within me, fear, my heart sinking, anxiety pounding, came something a little different. Anger. I rushed towards the figure, blitzing past confused restaurant workers and kicking the door into the back alley, only to see not one, but two masked people sprinting away, far out of reach. I caught my breath, looked down, and saw something that might have fallen from one of their pockets. A small totem carved from black stone, no bigger than a thumb. Wings folded tight around its body, a serpent coiled along one side, looking a bit like the strange statue I'd seen in the game. I pocketed it, still reeling. Connor showed up behind me. Sadie, what are you doing back here? Nothing. I needed some air. I'm not feeling that great. Sorry, you know, for mentioning it. It's fine. I'm guessing that you wanted to go home. Yeah. Back in front of the TV in my room, sounds of Kelsey's snores drifting through the wall as background noise. I held the idol I'd snagged in my real-life hand and watched as on-screen Larry looked over that same insignia in his polygonal hand. At this point, I had too much on my mind to sweat the supernatural stuff. Said Larry. I'm struggling with this one. So's Google, man, I said back. All my attempts to describe or deduce what this was unsuccessful. He lingered on it. Disquieting. He pocketed it. I will ruminate. Nonetheless, given our lack of progress, I can, if you'd like, try another vision. Yes, please, I said to the TV. Do note that I grow weak and will need further sustenance once this is complete. I nodded. He returned to his back room, again doing his visualization ritual, conjuring up two new images, this time on the bulletin board. A picture of a poorly drawn stick family, and beside it, the picture of a key. Family key? I asked. Family is the key, Larry said, lowering to the floor, presumably low on energy. Is there something going on with your family? I swallowed. Maybe? He leaned against the wall, lowering even more. Sustenance. I need peanut butter. Console off. I pulled up my phone. Begrudgingly, I texted my mom back. We'll come for dinner tomorrow night. And then, before I knew it, my head hit the pillow and I was lights out from a long day. I dreamt about flames. That wasn't new. About a day and a half remained before my doom, and an hour now before my mini family reunion. I was home alone, no Kelsey. The day up to this point brought nothing in the form of new leads or interesting revelations. I booted up the console and was greeted with Larry's usual kitchen spot, but no Larry. Instead, just a note that read, "Out searching for answers." God damn it. Remembering his note about sustenance, I grabbed a plate from the kitchen, toasted bread, and spread peanut butter onto it. Clocked unrelatedly that our usual full knife block had a knife missing, and brought the plate in front of the N64. And then I left. I sat at the dinner table and watched my mother across from me lift a forkful of salad into her mouth. Adjacent were my dad, business casual, disheveled as always, and my youngest brother, complete degenerate, glued to his phone. In the silence, I glanced past them into the expansive living room of my parents' mansion. God, they were always renovating, always updating something. From my perusal, I could tell the chandelier was new. New shelves, new grand piano. Great stuff, guys. You know, it's been 4 months since you last visited, Mom. Yeah, sorry, I said, been keeping busy. How's college, Dad? You should visit more, at least once a month. Once a month would be normal. Nah, I like this, said my brother mid-text. Way better when she's not here. Piercing glares from Mom and Dad, the little shit named Kyle. I took a bite. I thought about my response. School's fine, and sorry, Mom, I'll visit more. Just kidding, I won't, because Kyle's a dickbag. Sadie. Kyle laughed. Mom casually placed her fork down. Cordial, please. Eyes on me. Don't call your brother a dickbag. And to Kyle, stop being a dickbag. Claire. Dad again. I just thought normalcy, Mom continued. What we need to strive for after grief is normalcy. Oh, God. There's that spiel. Kyle. No, you're right. Sorry, Mom. Please continue. If I suddenly drop dead after this dinner, I'd hate for your last memory of me to be the one where I was being a prick. I'd really, sour the life insurance payment. Life insurance? I asked, almost choking my food. Oh, God. Mom with her head in her hands. That again. Always with that again. No, look, I'm just saying, it's fucked up. It's fucking capitalistic. What? How many times do you need to redecorate the guest room? I grieve by decorating. It's the one thing that can make me happy now. I used to be you three, but... Dad cleared his throat loudly. To be clear, as SVP, the company set me up with an extensive benefits package, insurance, trust funds, everyone in the family listed somewhere. When it happened, the payout was automatic. I would have declined it otherwise. The snips and self-absorbed interruptions only grew after that clarification. As it reached a boiling point, I finally chimed in again. Guys, temperature's down. I took a big breath. It's all fine. I'm sorry, Kyle. And Mom, I agree. Let's have a meal, okay? Let's focus on normalcy. At the next available reprieve, I went to the bathroom. And that's where I scribbled as many notes as I could. Mom, sus with salad. Dad, sus with life insurance. Kyle, just fucking Kyle. Anything and everything that came to mind, I heard my phone ring. Unknown caller. I answered it. Hello? A familiar voice. LeBron, thank you for leaving me that toast. What? He could call me now? I've been out searching for... Never mind. Point is, I had a strong feeling come over me just now. A vision. Surely the red thread of fate connecting us is flaring up. Dude, please talk normal. The house you are in. Explore the office. What would that... Disconnected. Dial tone. I felt like a ping pong ball, just being batted back and forth constantly. Nevertheless, I turned my brain and feelings off and I followed his direction. I eased the bathroom door open, tried my best not to make noise, and creaked up the steps to the second floor, down the hallway, to the room at the end. The only thing remotely close to an office was Dad's study. I entered the master bedroom. Despite the constant renovations, the fireplace always stayed real. White stone, pile of logs, the grate blackened with old ash. I moved through the too large room into the connected study. Immediately I went to work, flinging open drawers and cabinets, rifling through letters and documents. The sound of steps already coming up the stairs, more pulls at random drawers. One of them revealed a replica of the totem I found at the bar. Resting on top of a stack of papers, it looked charred. A real mental lag as I grappled with the image. What? I scoured the documents beneath it, printouts of various articles. Inferno at Downtown Charity Gala claims 50 lives, cause under investigation. 50 dead as fire engulfs city fundraiser. Officials probe faulty wiring. I didn't need reminders of her death right now. I looked further, reports from private investigators. Survivor testimony? Photographs of the scene and the aftermath, strange scrawlings embedded into the walls, CCTV camera footage of distant blurry figures sneaking into the event, and then a single sticky note lodged onto a random piece of paper reading, "Was it a ritual?" Steps getting closer. I dropped the material back into the drawer, slammed it shut, shifted out of the study to see my dad already halfway into the big bedroom. "Sadie?" I blinked. "Yeah, sorry, just..." What did I even say? I haven't been home in forever. I decided to give myself a tour. See what maybe changed upstairs." "Right. We have dessert downstairs if you..." "Sounds great." I awkwardly walked back down the hall with him. My eyes shot past my old bedroom. Vintage CRT TV there too, because god damn it, I'm consistent with my bedroom flourishes. And then my sister's room. Left untouched since the last time she was in there. And I pushed down every feeling I had about that matter, all except one thought. If her death wasn't an accident, I was going to find out what happened to her. I just needed to make sure I didn't die first. "9 a.m. Dawn of the final day. I walked to the 7-Eleven near my apartment, snagged 2 Mars bars, 2 cans of Celsius, and an Italian sub. Back at home, Kelsey had holed up in her room. Sick day from work. Good for her. She'd been working hard. I grabbed my own knife of choice from the kitchen. Self-defense for my oblivion. That was 2 missing from the block now. Then, taking a page from my forefathers, I returned to my room and engaged in peak millennial degeneracy. Snacks, video games, lighter to bowl. Only thing left on the bingo card was a Pickle Rick reference. In my lane, but bothered, and very much unmoisturized. Let's do this. I booted up the game. Covington's Redemption title screen. Let's start yet again. Rather than the usual fare, the screen stayed black. A white text box appeared. This place has had many visitors. Most eventually move on, but some linger. You'll be joining them all soon. The screen transitioned to a new location, a dark part of the city streets that I hadn't seen before. For the first time since I'd booted up the game, the sun was gone. There was no sound, not even the sound of my character's footsteps, as I guided them forward. In the far distance, I spotted Larry, in his coat, moving further and further down the road to darkness. I trailed. I could only move so fast. "Larry!" I called, but he couldn't seem to hear me. "Larry!" I shouted even louder, unconcerned with how crazy I must have seemed to Kelsey through the wall. But that didn't register either. So I just followed him. Those precious minutes, then precious hours ticked away, like it was all some fucked up cosmic joke. Still shrouded in 64-bit darkness, the slow pursuit finally ended. We stood at the large steps of a colossal building. That unnerving choral swelling I heard when I first entered the alley in the game stirred in the background again. "Where are we?" I asked. "Where the answers are," he said. "And you would know that how?" I whispered, coughing up some smoke IRL and momentarily forgetting that he'd literally introduced himself as the psychic lawyer. He stepped forward and eyed, now convinced my final moments were going to be in some fucking stupid side quest. Followed. Shortly after, we were in the interior of the dark building, equipped with flashlights, endless hallways with rare torches illuminating where our beams didn't. And as I thought about ways to pull the ripcord, turning the game off, rushing out of my apartment, firing a gun, running into the forest, aiming at any man, woman, or bear that came within 20 feet of me, he spoke up again. "Tell me what happened with your family." There wasn't much point in running now, was there? There was a... Damn it, why did I still feel things? There was this big charity gala event. Happens every year in my city. I got 2 tickets by being part of some mailing list, I guess. They were worth a lot. Wanted to sell them. My sister, she really wanted to go. She cared about this stuff. Said we should go together. Then I ghosted her the night of. Went to some dumb party, got wasted. It was hard to talk. She still went. Alone. The venue caught fire, and then she and a bunch of people died. "I'm sorry," said Larry, then echoing, almost confused. "A fire." The corridor that we were following ended at a large closed door. Beside it was a small pedestal with a prompt flickering above it. "Place book here." Larry immediately pulled various small notepads and pocketbooks from his coat. None of them registered. I thought for a second, looked over in my real life at the booklet I'd been collecting my useless anecdotes in, and grabbed it with my free hand. I turned to the TV again. My character had it in hand now, and I placed it on the pedestal. The door reacted and opened, revealing even more hallways, but littered with what looked like statues along the way. Mannequins. We kept going together. Reaching the first mannequin, I clocked that it almost looked like Bryson. Big dumb X. Eyes full white, no pupils. Frozen. A lanyard hung from his neck. The badge inside marked with a red X. "Do you know who this is?" Larry asked. I forged ahead towards another mannequin. Slender, dressed smartly. Professor Ward. Eyes clouded white, lanyard with badge indicating the same red X again. Was the game translating the names I'd put into my book and giving answers? I maneuvered further down to a gathering of 3 more lifeless statues, all standing in front of a door. Silhouettes that I was able to immediately recognize. My dickbag brother, mother beside him, father beside her. As the background choir's off-key hum reached a fevered pitch, and Larry came up behind me. "LeBron?" Everything started glitching, skipping, cutting to black, cutting to nothing. In the moments of stabilization, I caught the badges on my family, my brother, X, my father, X. And as it all felt like it was going to collapse, my mother's, X. Like the rest of them. I walked past the nuclear family, and through the door ahead, a sense of finality and dread filled me. Larry followed as we emerged into a grand ballroom. At the front, a podium on a stage before a heavy curtain. Around the room, chandeliers, gold chiavari chairs, and linen-draped tables. Larry beside me suddenly grabbed his head. He fell to the floor. Larry? The walls in the room caught fire, wallpaper burning to reveal bizarre inscriptions. Was this the room where it happened? If so, what the fuck did this have to do with anything? The environment around us started shifting. The room stage was now adorned with that winged, crown-bearing statue with a serpent and the staff. A textbook flickered on screen as a cutscene began. To fulfill the ritual and call forth Astaroth's earthly favor, power, wealth, and devotion. Larry writhed on the floor, while the inferno licked the walls and grew closer to the stage. 8 devotees were chosen to offer up what they loved most. The blaze closed in on the curtains. 7 were successful, but 1 failed. My attempt to piece together the madness was interrupted by my bedroom door in real life opening. I looked back to see Kelsey enter. With her, Connor. Yo, she said, not looking too hot. Homeboy's been worried about you. What the fuck? Why would you? I realized how stupid I was sounding. I'm playing my game right now. Connor sat beside me, annoyingly close. Kelsey flanked me on the other end. Connor went into his new monologue immediately. Look, you've been skipping class, Sadie. I feel like, you're falling into like a dark pattern or something. I'm just doing my own shit. I stopped speaking when I turned back to the CRT to see Larry, an absolute mess of himself, still grabbing his head, starting to speak. LeBron, he said, I can feel that your killer, is painfully close by. The lights went out in my room. TV flickered off, game no longer running, and immediately, with my high out-of-my-mind sense of self-preservation, I threw myself away from my 2 friends, grabbed the knife I had stashed, held it in front of me, and glared at their shadowed outlines. Stay the fuck away from me or I'll stab you. What are you doing? Kelsey, almost laughing. Sadie, what the fuck is going on with you? Stay the fuck back. No steps forward, not even one, or I promise you, I'll fucking do it. They remained stalled in their respective spots as I held ground for 1 second. 2 seconds. I rushed to the TV, blade still held out carelessly in one hand, snagged the power cord from the socket, ripped the yellow, red, and white cords from the back of the CRT, and hugged the wall as I tossed them, along with the console, the cartridge, and then finally my knife into a nearby backpack. Zip! I looked behind me. Window already cracked open to the early evening winter sky. 3rd floor height, bushes outside below. Fuck it. Sadie? Kelsey said again. I pushed the window open and in one motion tore through the window screen, hurling myself out. Sadie, what the fuck? You'll kill yourself. What are you? Crash. Landing in a heap, I could feel the damage, but couldn't place it. Knees, shins, shoulders, ankles. I wasn't sure. The bushes at least swallowed most of the impact. I looked down to see... The knife had stabbed through the bottom of the bag. It missed me, but Jesus, that could have been bad. I rushed forward, reslinging the backpack, limping, bleeding, almost having to fling myself forward through the pain. I had a destination in mind, but in terms of getting there, was it best to Uber or... A cab turned into the road right in front of me, like a bolt out of the blue. I shouted for its attention, waving my hands. Looking crazy, no doubt, the driver slowed at first, got a good look at me, and then sped away. As all hope drained, I spotted another cab, static, parked further down the street. I waved at the man inside. He didn't seem thrilled, but he stayed where he was. I left that cab with a giant tip. No use for money when I'm dead. Punched in the gate code, ran to the door of my parents' mansion, fumbled for the keys, and rushed inside. Guys? Mom? More steps. Dad? No one seemed to be home. I rushed upstairs to my old room, pulled the console out of my backpack, and got things set up while holding my phone between my ear and shoulder to call my mom. Dial tone. Answer. Mom? I said. Sweetie, what is it? She said in a hushed tone. Where are you guys? Hun? It's your sister's 1 year. We're doing a vigil at the cemetery. You told us you didn't want to come. Did you change your mind, or... Fucking hell, it's the anniversary. No, it's never mind. I hung up the call. Game set up. Shh. Title screen on CRT while I peeked outside IRL in paranoid fashion. I tried 911 on my phone. 911, what is your emergency? 1427 Crestview Drive. Someone's trying to kill me. Please send help. Hung up again. Shifted my focus to the game. The curtain had been burned away, revealing a panel with 8 faces on the wall, faces my psychic lawyer friend was staring at. I used the controller to close the distance between him and the game. Larry. All the faces looked grayed out and lifeless, except for one. One that looked like me. I caught his gaze fixed on a different one, however, a pale face that looked identical to his. This is how I died, he said. He looked around. Which means all of this is a mirage. Some strange dream. Hey, I said out loud, I know this is crazy, but I need you right now. Larry, I think whoever killed my sister and killed you, they wanted me there that night. They're trying to get me now. Larry! And as on-screen characters in dark clothing started entering the blazing gala room, I peeked out the real-life mansion window to see, shifting in the yard, figures in black moving through the darkness, past the front door. Shit. Dude, I screamed, come the fuck on! He finally slowly turned to me. Use the light. What? The lighter. Steps already barreling inside, a moving earthquake, an incoming train of death. I left the room, panicked, breathing, repeating his words. Lighter, lighter, lighter. I pulled my lighter out of my pocket, thinking, rushing, looking, trying to spot anything else that'd make more sense. Lighter, 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 I repeated, peeking past room after room from the hallway, eventually reaching the master bedroom again. Fireplace. Besides the logs, lighter fluid. I grabbed it. Lighter, lighter, fucking cryptic motherfucker. I rushed back, opened the bottle, the barrage coming in. I poured the lighter fluid down the top steps of the staircase, reckless and shaking, figures in dark clothing and ski masks dashing up the steps. I brought my shivering hand with spark lighter in tow down to the closest flicker of fuel nearest to me, and I brought it to life. The expensive staircase fell ablaze right in front of my eyes. I felt the warmth from my distance while the intruders felt annihilation. Pain screams, low groans of death, bodies engulfed in a sort of unreality I never imagined I'd see up front. All except for the one who'd gotten farthest up before the flames caught. Mask and sleeve burning, I backed away into my room from the one remaining attacker who had escaped the staircase of death set piece in the B-horror movie that was my life. I tried to slam the door shut, but he kicked it back open, tossing off his burning black sweater and ski mask. And then Connor, looking less 13 Reasons Why and more Two-Face, tackled me to the floor, his hands around my throat, squeezing. He spoke. I made sure you got those tickets, but you didn't fucking go that night. You're so fucking unpredictable. Connor, he squeezed harder. I'm sorry, he continued, but the ritual needed me to give up who I love, and I love you. And I loved you for so long, and you just never saw me. You killed my sister. It was supposed to be over, and then I'd have a good life. Astaroth was going to give me everything I ever wanted, but still, there was a whole year after that fire. I reached for my nearby open backpack for the knife still inside. A whole year we had to wait to finish it. And during that time, I wanted to see you change. I wanted to see you become a healthier, more lucid person so you could see that the right guy for you was right there. My fingers barely reached the knife. I started fading. I squeezed the handle hard as I could. If you would have just fallen for me, I would have left all of this behind. I would have ditched all of this. I tried to swing, but the energy was gone. The breath was gone. I was falling under. Just the glare of the CRT behind me. Darkness, otherwise. I let the knife slip from my hands, and then... Suddenly... Connor's grip loosened from me. My eyes opened to see the knife sticking out of Connor's chest as if it had been driven through from behind. The knife, gripped by something invisible, slid back out of his chest before vanishing outright. Connor fell back as I coughed up a storm while reorienting my body to the flood of oxygen it needed. I turned to the glowing TV to see Larry standing on the wreckage of the flames and the fallen assailant in the gala room, knife glimmering in his hand, the inferno all but poised to swallow him. "Run," he said. I lifted myself up while the fire in my real surroundings continued to spread. I took a brief look at Connor, who looked like he was fading. I had to ask, "You eat salad? Is that like some sort of key trait about you?" He coughed up blood. "Every day for lunch. You never paid attention." And then he was gone. And then the flames covered his body, and milliseconds after, they had the walls. I looked desperately for the best way out, catching the N64 and TV falling to sparks and embers as well. "No!" I screamed, grabbing the burning cartridge and feeling the sting in my hand. I stared down the only painful way out. My second required jump out of a window from elevated height today. I readied myself and then crashed through one more time with Covington's Burning Redemption in my hand, landing with a thud in the front yard, shards of glass traveling with me, and as I landed on the frigid winter ground, I was absolutely sure this time that I had broken something. Still, now outside I desperately blew on the cartridge, hot potatoing it between my hands to try and preserve it, pressing it against the cold winter grass to see if that would help, until eventually the flickers of fire faded. And that's when I looked up and spotted Kelsey. Knife in her hand, running up the driveway right towards me with the intensity of a bride with cold feet. "Oh God," I said, "just fucking kill me then." She stopped right in front of me. "The fuck is wrong with you? Are you like into arson now or something?" "Why do you have that?" I pointed at the knife. "This?" She looked incredulous. "I grabbed the weapon because all fucking week I've been seeing people in dark get-ups and ski masks follow me fucking everywhere." I pointed to myself. They were for me, actually." "What kind of nonsense have you been getting yourself into?" "It's done now," I said. I turned to look back at the mansion, which was now nearly consumed by fire. Something about the sight seemed to drain all detachment from me. As the sounds of sirens grew closer and the blue light of the police cars bounced off the mansion's walls. "That's how my sister died," I said, finally crying after a year of no tears. Kelsey ruffled my hair. The fire grew and grew. "Hey, your parents' mansion really got fucked up. It's fine. I'm sure they have insurance for it." Feeling an inkling, I pulled something out of my pocket. That totem, with a strange winged crowned figure. Astaroth. I tossed it into the fire of the mansion. I was in my room, my left foot in a cast. I rolled a joint, my own little sanctuary. Been a few weeks since that night, since the insane fallout of discovering what the crazy Astaroth worshipping cult was up to. Cops, insurance, and all sorts of small reconciliations. Kelsey was out on a date night. To her credit, she'd helped me make today's toast. I was sitting on a plate next to the console. Not expecting much, I blew into the cartridge, stuck it into the new, rather expensive N64 I purchased off Facebook Marketplace, and I turned it on. Nothing at first. I let out a disappointed sigh until I saw a faint signal. Static lines flickering across the TV screen, meaning that it was registering something. And then the title screen. Covington's Redemption. I pumped my fist. I did, of course, find in my research into the Gala fire post-Connor's heel turn that among the victims was a gentleman named Michael Covington, public defender. Where his ghost got the name Larry from, I wasn't exactly sure. I pressed start and was immediately greeted with the shot of his small kitchen table. He wasn't sitting there, though. My heart sank. Until I heard footsteps. And turned to see him coming up his stairs looking like he'd been through the ringer. Clothes all ruined, jagged hair all messy as shit, and finally taking a spot in his chair. We looked at each other through our shared medium. My life is a lie, LeBron. I shook my head. You saved my life. And solved the case of your murder, and my sister's murder, and the murders of so many other people. That says more than anything. That's not a lie. He shrugged. Looked at the blocky, low-poly version of the peanut butter toast on the table. Didn't go for it. Sure, he said. Hey, I said, full of life now from weeks of processing. I know it's probably depressing to realize that you're kind of dead and kind of sort of decoupled from whatever your real life was. A grimace from his side. I struck a pose, fist in front of my face. But I'm gonna need you to be cunning. I looked off to the side. And brave. And then a deep breath. And I'm going to need you to deal with that existential misery because... He didn't look thrilled. I think we should solve crimes together. We stared at each other for way too long. Until finally, I saw the subtlest smile come across his face. He took a bite of the toast. And I think I got through to him. I've worked at a Thai restaurant for a few years as a dishwasher. That was my job on paper, but over time I started to pick up more duties between the time of people quitting and getting hired. It got to the point where I could cook anything off the menu, if that was ever needed. During a hectic shift one night, I helped pack some takeout orders, handing them over to the waiting DoorDash drivers. My boss spoke in this kind of broken English, but it's one of the funniest guys ever known, okay? It was hard to get stressed on busy nights like that, with him forgetting words, making his jokes 10 times funnier. Takeout orders flew out of the door, and we tried to keep up with the rush inside of the restaurant. Snag hit when we ran out of cooked pork belly. One last order of pork belly bowl needed to be sent out right away, or else we'd lose our driver to a different order, and we'd risk a bad rating. So I told my boss that we should send a message out or outright cancel the order. Instead, he placed the last strip of pork belly in the takeout order and sent it off. The bowl, it should have had at least 5 pieces, not one. We honestly didn't have time to send a message and deal with a single order, with 10 more waiting on the kitchen. So I hated the idea of setting out a meal lacking the main ingredient, but hey, we got so busy the rest of the night I totally forgot about it. We received no complaints, not even a negative review that night, so we put it out of our minds. The next night was just as busy. At least my boss cooked extra pork belly in the morning so we wouldn't run out in the middle of the rush again. But at the end of the night, I volunteered to clean up, lock up the restaurant. I mean, he trusted me enough to do so. I liked doing the end of shift cleanup. My apartment was walking distance, unlike everybody else who needed that last bus to get home. So I just put on some music. I got to work putting the kitchen back in order after our long 2 nights of running around. I just finished up, shut off most of the lights, ready to leave. The kitchen dark with only the exit light showing the way out. I double-checked my keys were in my bag, hanging off my shoulder, and was about to take a step towards the door when I heard something. I felt positive someone just took a few steps inside the kitchen. That was odd, right? I knew for a fact everyone had left. Did the owner come back in, check the stock? I just didn't hear him over the music or something. I said, hey. Hello, boss? I called out in the dark room, my voice shaking slightly. I strained to hear, thinking that maybe I just imagined things. And just when I went to move again, I heard something behind me, a sound of fabric moving. 2 massive hands come out of nowhere, wrap long, bony fingers around my arms from behind. I jump up, I let out a small squeak of fear, unable to move from shock. I wanted to run, but my body refused to listen. Those hands, they looked human, but the black skin and the pointed fingers simply couldn't be anything besides a creature of nightmares. I wish this was a robbery instead of whatever stood in my back. The sound of fabric came again. A hot puff of breath moved my hair near my ears and the back of my neck crawled. What the hell was this thing going to do? I really didn't want to get torn apart because I stayed late at work. It could do anything to me. No one would find out until the morning. Hell, if it didn't leave any trace behind, no one would even find out that I'd been killed. My body shook. So many gruesome images came through my mind, and I silently prayed for it to just go away. I ordered extra pork belly, but I only got one. The voice came right next to my ear. I shuddered from it being so close. It sounded low and hoarse and impossible to pin down a gender. I mean, even if this monster had one, I couldn't believe I might be killed because we sent out one order short. I searched my mind trying to think of anything to say in order to save my life, and when I didn't respond fast enough, it spoke again. Do you have more in today? It whispered. I risked turning my head slightly to see a face of pure darkness with a mouth showing rows of white teeth shining in the darkness. Yes? I said cautiously. It removed a hand from my shoulder and dug around in the darkness of its body for a moment. It looked like a tall figure dressed in some sort of black hooded fabric. The creature so large it really shouldn't fit inside of this small kitchen. It pulled out its hand with long, deadly claws and held out a closed fist. I carefully held my hands out to accept whatever it was offering. Some bills and change dropped down into my expecting hands, and I stood frozen to the spot, confused and scared. 1 pork belly bowl, please. Extra pork belly. It whispered with a wide grin that caused my body to shake again. I looked around the empty kitchen, not expecting that kind of request. Now? I asked, knowing that was a dumb question. It tightened the grip on my arm to the point where it hurt a little. The thing could tear me apart without any effort, and made that fact clear. Now, please. It didn't need to repeat itself. I nodded, shoving the money in my pocket, not even checking the amount. My arm was released, and I hurried along to get started on cooking. I knew how to make everything. We already had most of it prepped. I just needed to cook the rice. I flicked on a light, heard a small hiss. The monster, nowhere to be seen when the light came on, but I didn't trust it left for good. That was confirmed when I took out the lettuce and heard it ask not to have any in its bowl. I hurried along, warming up what was needed, and finished making the largest pork belly bowl the restaurant had ever seen. I mean, after all, we only had large rice pots. It was easier to make a large bowl. I made sure to load the bowl up with the desired meat, wondering how I'll explain the missing amount to my boss. When everything was ready, I looked around trying to find the monster, wondering if I just imagined the whole thing. Light, please. Came a voice somewhere in the room. I quickly went over and turned off the kitchen light again, expecting the massive creature I'd seen before to show up. Instead, I saw a small thing appear at the counter sitting in a chair I took from the restaurant. It looked exactly like the dark creature from before, just smaller. Only 4 feet tall, if that. Hands extremely small and tiny feet dangling off the chair. Another empty bowl, please. It spoke in a smaller voice that sounded much like a child, but I knew it was still the creature that could kill me, so I listened. I set the bowl down on the counter, and the small thing went to work filling it with some of its meal, making a smaller pork belly bowl, tiny hands pushing the second bowl towards me and patting the counter next to where it sat. Then the creature started to dig into its meal, feet kicking happily. This thing was sharing the meal I just made. After coming all the way here and requesting food after hours, it put aside some to share. I still felt some fear towards it, whatever that broke into the restaurant, but it was making it really hard to be overly worried for my life. I didn't eat dinner yet, so I took the bowl and I started to nibble on it, keeping my eyes on the creature. It ate fast, but also acted as if the food was too hot, which, made sense. If it ordered food, any meal would have cooled down by the time it reached the creature. This might be the first time it ate so soon after the meal had been finished cooking. Halfway through the meal, it placed some more change in the counter, requesting an egg. We soft-boiled eggs ahead of time, so I grabbed one from the fridge. They normally warm up while sitting and with the rest of the hot dish. The monster didn't seem to mind the cold egg. In fact, he hesitated before placing more change down, requesting another egg. By the time it was down to the last bite of meat, the monster looked like it struggled to finish. I'd already finished my own and got started on washing the bowl. It didn't make sense to waste some takeout containers. I looked over my shoulder, not seeing the creature in the dark. I let out a very high-pitched scream when I felt something touch my leg. The thing had gotten off of its chair and held out the empty bowl to be washed. My heart slowed back down to normal, and I accepted the dish from those tiny hands. With everything washed and out away, I wanted to leave as fast as possible. A tugging came from my pants, and I regretfully reached down to take the creature's small hand so we could leave. I found it didn't walk fast enough, so I needed to pick it up. It wasn't pleasant holding this creature, maybe the size and shape of a small child, but it felt like it was just meat, wrapped in fabric without any bones in its body, like holding a room-temperature pork roast wrapped in plastic. I made it outside, but now I was left holding a dark, creepy hell monster in my arms, unsure of what to do next. "It's late. No more buses. I can walk you home," it offered. The small thing slipped from my arms, and the body shifted into a taller shape, almost looking like an adult in a robed Halloween costume. The feet still appeared far too small to support the tall body. No, it's fine. I can walk home alone, just fine," he said, hands out front, trying to refuse the offer as politely as possible. "It's not safe. Monsters come out at night." The thing responded in the same low tone that caused my shoulders to tense. After a few seconds passed between us, I thought I heard a laugh. It took a few steps away and found a shadow, the body slowly sinking into the darkness to leave. I couldn't help but ask a question that had been bothering me. How do you have money or like an address, to buy food?" I asked, staring at the smiling mouth that paused to face me. "I have a job, Being this man-eating monster is just a hobby. Best not to go into it. Being a monster's fun, but eating people can be such a hassle. Hobbies should be enjoyed, right? Anyway, I prefer eating takeout, but I'll change my mind if someone ever cheaps out of my pork belly again." The dark shape said with a smile, never leaving its face. Noted, I replied with a dry throat. I watched it leave into the dark shadow, praying we'd never cross paths again. The next day I told my boss I made a meal for myself to take home and gave him the money for what would have been used. Didn't care at all. He told me I could take home a free meal by the end of the night if I needed. That was one bullet dodged. After that incident, we started to get 2 orders a week of pork belly bowls with extra pork and extra eggs. We ran into being low on pork again, and I stopped my boss from sending out the orders short. I made the effort to call the number listed only to get a text in response saying they would be fine waiting for more pork to be made or substitute it with an egg or two. The owner being so busy, he let me deal with the order. I finally got it sent out and we got a 5-star review later that night. Honestly, I'd rather keep my life than the reviews. I really need to go back to school and get out of that job. Dealing with customers. You'll never really know who you'll be serving. Would you cut off your pinky to get $1 million? Would you kill your cheating spouse to marry the man of your dreams? Would you eat a dog turd to win a year's supply of ice cream? See, these are the sort of preposterous questions that make up the Would You game, which is like a deranged cousin of the Would You Rather board game, but unlike the popular board game, the Would You game has real-world stakes. Stakes as high as life or death, or even higher. I found this out the hard way with my sister, Seti. Her actual name is September, but everyone called her Seti, just like everyone calls me Toby. My actual name is October, and yes, we do hate our parents for this. Seti was always competitive, even when she was very little, but I didn't understand how competitive until she invented the Would You game. We played during boring summers at home. In the beginning, it was just Seti, me, our older sister Jules, July, everyone called her Jules, and her best friend Darren. Darren's the one who added cards to the game. Structure. He was kind of a nerd, liked board games, though he only reluctantly played them with me and Seti, whom he found too young and competitive. The game as it exists today is largely Darren's construction. There are 7 cards, always dealt in order. Would you, risk verb, risk noun, 2, reward verb, reward noun. For example, would you kill your roommate? 2, cure cancer. Most of the time, the randomness of the cards led to absurd sentences, less like truth or dare, more like Mad Libs. Points were earned through guesses, with fellow players trying to guess whether you would or would not. Often, the fun of the game revolved around players justifying their choices, as in, sure, eating a dog turd would be gross, but 2 minutes of gross is worth a full year of delish. It was silly. Harmless fun. The fact the game turned into something horrifying is my fault. I knew even at the time I shouldn't have done what I did, but I was furious with Seti. She'd pulled, would you lick a cockroach to get a day home from school? And she said yes. Seti said yes to everything, I pointed out. It's ridiculous. She's lying. She wouldn't do any of these things. I would! Seti, about 7 years old at the time, balled her fists. She was trying very hard to be cool enough to play with her older siblings and keep up with us. You wouldn't, I snapped, sick of her lying. We went back and forth, and finally, I declared I was adding a new rule. The challenge rule. Any player could challenge another player, and then the challenged player would have to do the thing that they'd said yes to. If they did, the player who'd made the challenge had to give the reward. A day home from school meant that I'd cover for her with our parents. Seti's face immediately took on a pink cast. She clearly hadn't anticipated my making up this rule. I, cruel older sibling that I was, challenged her to lick the cockroach. It wasn't nice, I admit. The tears came into her eyes. She looked at me in disbelief. Seti always looked up to me, idolized me. I'd like to say that, in the moment, I regretted what I was doing to her, but at the same time, I was just gloating. But little Seti wouldn't be beaten either. Darren went and got a roach. He and Jules really should have been chaperoning better, but Darren was just gleeful at the idea of anyone licking a cockroach. He pulled a dead one from one of the traps and laid it out on a napkin in front of her. Seti's lower lip quivered. Her big eyes lifted to mine. Then she leaned forward, squenched her eyes, and stuck her tongue out. The pink tip touched the roach. She licked it, declared Darren, delighted, even as Jules cried, ew, and I exclaimed, gross. And now, I owed her a day off school. Triumphant, she squished the dead roach in the napkin and tossed it into the trash. I win, she said. Yeah, well, you licked a roach, which means you lose at life, I retorted. I win, she declared again. From then on, the challenge rule held, but I should have known it was a stupid, dangerous rule. The next time we played, the very first card Seti flipped had kill on it. She paused on that card, while Darren's mouth made an O of suspense, and Jules and I exchanged troubled glances. Including the kill card was controversial. It sometimes resulted in hilariously absurd combinations, such as, would you kill your butt to become a lost treasure? To an adult, this sort of Mad Libs game's ridiculous, but when I was 10, it was hilarious. But of course, the word could also result in some very bad combinations. Seti kept drawing. Your sibling to win this game. She paused, mouth quirking to the side as she considered the cards. Invalid, declared Jules. No, we could still guess, said Darren, even as Seti slid her answer card, a card that said yes or no, face down in front of her. Darren, Jules objected, but Darren was already sliding his card forward as well. Jules and I followed suit, and we all flipped them upright. Darren and Jules had guessed no. My card said yes, I knew my dumb sister, and Seti. Hers also said yes. I knew it, I said, glaring quietly. She smiled back at me, serenely. Come on, bullshit, Darren said, while Jules elbowed him, but Darren ignored her and growled, challenge. No, said Jules. Oh no, we're not. What? Darren snapped. It's in the rules. If she kills Toby, she wins the game. He eyed Seti and said, pointedly, I'm not going to let her win by cheating or bluffing. Enough, said Jules. My younger sister gathered the cards in front of her, set both her yes and no cards aside, and smoothed her skirt. There was no red face this time, no crying or embarrassment. She stood up, turned to Darren and said, Well, aren't you silly? Don't you know it's just a game? Come on, Toby, let's go. Something in my stomach unknotted as her fingers intertwined mine. It was a relief to know that despite her competitiveness, my sister could recognize when a thing went too far. Suddenly, her arm curved around my neck, yanking me back in a chokehold. I slapped at her arms, fingers clawed and pulled at me as her face went purple and my windpipe felt crushed and speckles blackened my vision. Then she was off me, hauled back by Darren and Jules as she howled, Let me go! Let go! Seti, stop it! Hollered Jules. Seti was still screeching as they dragged her to her room. Jesus, he's batshit, growled Darren. Jules declared no more games. If I kill Toby, then I win, panted Seti as they locked her in. I win! Say that I win! No one wins, Seti, screamed Jules. I can't believe I even have to say this. I'm telling Mom and Dad, why do you have to be so crazy? Christ! The game is suspended. Do you understand me? It's over. There are no winners, and we are never playing this fucking game ever again. So that was the end of the Would You game for many years. Seti found other games to play, of course, less dangerous ones. She was really good at games and made a fortune with gambling, the lottery, card tournaments, investing, you know, playing the market itself as some sort of game, she told me. And as with all such ventures, she tackled it with a competitive spirit and almost unmatched skill, though she did suffer some stunning losses occasionally, as a consequence of her tremendous risks. She knew all the tricks of the trade. Shuffling tricks, sleight of hand, weighted dice, counting cards. Contrary to what you might believe, she was actually a pretty good sister, most of the time. It was Seti who took care of our parents, making sure their bills were paid and their lawn mowed and the big house always tidy. She did a lot of the cooking and cleaning herself before she'd do her makeup and go out for the evening to the casino or for a drink with business partners. She never went to college. Instead, she kept house for our parents. But then, she didn't really need college. We had wealth inherited from our grandparents, and Seti multiplied it neatly, managing investments for all of us. She did this with complete transparency and fairness, and while she sometimes gambled heavily with her own money, she never did with ours, always putting it in investments according to our willingness to embrace risk or security. And yet, through my college years, when Seti was finishing high school, she brought back the Would You game. This time, being legally an adult, she had no one to rein her in. I found out about it from Keeter, another boy at her school. He told me how she'd started playing with a group of preppy senior friends. I tried to shrug this off. Whatever, we were all adults now. Surely my sister wouldn't go too crazy, right? It wasn't until later I found out she'd changed the rules again. She and some of the other seniors were playing one day when they decided that the Mad Libs aspect was no longer as entertaining as when we were children. and that players should draw until the cards issued a sentence that the majority agreed made sense. Of course, even then, most of the results were still things that couldn't actually happen, but others, like, would you eat bugs to get a winning lotto ticket, were not only perfectly valid combinations, but also easy enough to both challenge and reward. And this is exactly what happened when Seti and her friends played. One of them claimed he'd eat bugs to get a winning lotto ticket. She challenged. He ate several ants, so Seti bought lotto tickets until she had a winning one. Granted, it was only $3, but the cards hadn't specified, had they? And that is how it began. Seti herself becoming a guarantor of sorts any time she played the game. She had the money, after all. Even back then, our family was well off, and Seti already had a considerable sum saved from her gambling and side hustles. I never knew what else she did on the side, but I assume some of it wasn't legal. She could afford to escalate the game, so when a combination came up like, would you dump your boyfriend to earn a new iPhone, Seti could issue the challenge, and when her friend followed through with the dumping, said friend would be gifted a new phone. It was nonsense, risky, unhealthy, but not, I guess, more than any other kind of gambling. Until it got worse. Several years later, Seti had some friends over. I'd refused to join. I'd sworn to myself never to play this game. Seti seemed to get even more competitive when I was around, so I kept away from the group, watching from across the living room. Turns kept passing round, and everyone was laughing, drinking. Few people were smoking, but that wasn't really my business. Mostly it sounded like absurd stuff. Would you kiss Miss Whittinger to save a litter of kittens? Groans. Miss Whittinger was the principal at Seti's high school, and in games of Kiss, Marry, Kill, she was universally the kill option. Most discussion ensued about whether a litter of kittens would actually die if the player said no to this, and whether the price, having to kiss Miss Whittinger, was too high. Seti considered the question, but intertwined her fingers and explained that since the kittens were in the reward deck, not the risk deck, the game would not put kittens in harm's way. In short, kissing will mean you do a good deed, but not kissing won't make you do a bad one, she declared. Thus, if Scott, the player who had drawn the combination, were to return to their old high school to kiss the loathsome Miss Whittaker, a litter of kittens would be rescued, but nothing would happen otherwise. Well, yeah, but if I don't kiss her, some kittens somewhere might not get rescued, so guess I gotta kiss her. Scott grinned at the groans all around. Challenge, said Seti almost automatically, almost bored. Scott did indeed end up visiting the high school on a made-up errand and kissing the principal on the cheek. She was suitably astonished at this affection from the troublesome alum, but also rather touched. And Seti honored her word and awarded Scott by saving a litter of kittens that still occupies our parents' house, where she devotedly looked after them. But that's not the reason I'm telling you about this game. See, shortly after Scott's draw, another friend, Rosalinda, drew a combination that elicited quite a stir. Would you cut off your finger to gain $1 million? Gasps and whispers all around. Everyone at that party knew that if it was done, Seti could potentially honor the million. This was into her investing years. She had the financial wherewithal for it. She had granted other gifts before, but never to such an extravagant amount. The most she'd ever given was a gift of a Bahamas trip. I mean, I'd totally do it, said Scott. No way, said another friend. No way I'd do that. But $1 million, said someone else. That one's a hypothetical, right? Said another, glancing tentatively at Seti, who just sat back holding her drink with her eyes glimmering and a lazy smile on her face. Well, obviously, said Scott. I mean, who's got $1 million to give? Seti might. Yeah, right. Screw it, said Rosalinda, slamming her card down. I'm in. Make your picks, people. Everyone voted. Half yes, half no. Rosalinda flipped her card. Yes. Everyone glanced at Seti, who stood up quietly, moved to the bar to pour herself another drink, and then poured a glass for Rosalinda too, a glass of strong stuff. She then moved into the kitchen, where she opened a drawer. I felt my heart rate increase. Moved to follow Seti, in whose fingers glinted silver. She sterilized the knife over a flame, then brought it to Rosalinda, laying it out on a tray with napkins, bandages, a first aid kit. Rosalinda's eyes grew wide as saucers. "Oh, shit," whispered Scott, disbelieving. Everyone had gone utterly silent, appalled. I held my breath. Don't, I thought. Don't. What should I have done? Call the police? Even now I wondered. No one was forcing Rosalinda to do anything, and yet... Seti sat back in her cushioned chair, idly swirling the bourbon in her glass before downing it. Her eyes glimmered over a smile as she raised her gaze to Rosalinda and whispered, "Challenge." Everyone was dead still. And then, Rosalinda picked up the knife. I'll spare you the description of the aftermath of that. The would you card had said cut your finger off, but they had said nothing about sewing it back on. Scott put Rosalinda's finger on ice immediately after she cut it off, to the screams of the other players. There were some accusations that said he was sick. This all went too far. Then Rosalinda's friends rushed her and her severed finger to the hospital, where it was reattached, and of course, Rosalinda and her friends were somewhat mollified that shortly afterwards, $1 million was transferred to her bank account. In fact, when word spread, others began seeking out my sister to play. And that was when I put my foot down about playing in the house. I said our parents' house couldn't be turned into a gambling den, that I didn't want murders or maimings under their roof, and for them to have to deal with cleaning up blood or whatever sick things happened there. Seti agreed to take her games elsewhere. I tried to keep out of her business, but occasionally word leaked from our parents, or Jules, or mutual acquaintances, and it seemed like both the risks and rewards were getting bigger. But when things really got out of hand, when I finally put my foot down that it had to stop, was the first time someone died. Before COVID, the games had involved physical risk, even maiming, but had never included death. I wasn't present for the lethal draw, and only found out later that the combination pulled was, would you become haunted by a terrifying ghost to save your child? This particular game took place over Zoom during the height of the pandemic, among a handful of players who won the chance to play via lottery. At this point, Seti's games were in high demand. As it turned out, one of the players had an eldest daughter on a ventilator. Now, you'd think that any combination involving a ghost would be inherently invalid. After all, it's not like Seti could conjure up the supernatural, but apparently the players agreed to accept it as a valid draw, and the devoted father played yes. Anything for my kids, he said. I viewed the recording on Zoom later, and after the father played yes, Seti's eyes fluttered for several seconds in this strange way, as if she were in a trance or listening to something no one else could hear. Then her eyes opened and she declared, "Challenge." A few days later, the daughter recovered. But it wasn't until said daughter messaged me, begging me to intervene, that I understood how deranged the game had become. The man who answered the door in his bathrobe had eyes red-rimmed from weeping, a week's worth of beard stubbling his gaunt face. Without a word, he let me into his house, and as he shuffled away from me, I noticed burn marks on the walls. Not in any obvious pattern, but here and there, marring the walls. He pointed to a pile of framed photographs stacked on the sofa. They'd formerly been hung on the walls, I realized, but he'd taken them down because in every single photo, he had been burned out, leaving the rest of his family intact. That's how the wallpaper had been charred. There was also, I noticed, a burn mark in the shape of a handprint on his arm. While the father wearily offered me tea, I picked up one of the photos. The backing and part of the glass damaged from the heat. Is it just the burn marks, or is other stuff going on? The lights, he whispered as he stirred the tea. Shrieks and bangs at night, handprints, dreams, and this. He pulled open a drawer full of children's drawings, scrawled by his daughter and her siblings, kept from when they were little. In all the drawings, he had been scratched out, and a blackened figure like a shadow seemed to be looming behind him, its hands on his shoulders. I mean, she's obviously hired someone to come and do all this, I said. You're probably having nightmares from the stress. No way would I believe that SETI could summon a ghost, but I absolutely believe she had the resources to make a man think she had. The defiled children's drawings especially left me chilled. How had she identified which figure in the child's drawing was him? Whoever said he had hired and chase him off, and I promised that I would contact my sister in the morning and put an end to this so-called haunting. The man seemed relieved by my assurance that all the spooky effects were staged, yet he also requested me not to interfere. He was clearly anxious that if he didn't let things continue, his daughter would fall sick again. I tried to assure him that SETI didn't have that kind of power and couldn't make her relapse, but he insisted I keep out of it. Privately, I decided to speak to SETI anyway. She was overseas, however. The man killed himself before she got back. Hung himself from the staircase, leaving his beloved daughter and her siblings to mourn. I went to our parents' house for my sister the night she returned. She'd barely gotten off the plane a half hour earlier, but despite what must have been a weary flight, she waltzed through the front door in a glitzy suit like she'd stepped out of Vegas. Seeing me, she spread her arms wide in a greeting. "How could you?" I snarled. She dropped her arms, though her smile didn't falter. "Toby, dear, I didn't. Whatever it is you're upset about, it was the cards. A ghost, SETI. A terrifying ghost," she corrected. "Of course it wasn't a ghost, SETI," I bellowed, shaking with fury. "The funeral had been 2 days ago. The only terrifying thing here is you. For hounding a man to death, you drove him to this. It's you who fulfills all the challenges, who delivers the rewards. Admit it. You paid for his daughter to get special treatment. I looked into it. You couldn't guarantee it, but you did everything you could to make sure she'd recover, didn't you? And when she did, you made him suffer. He had to complete the challenge." She pursed her lips, silent for a moment, and then finally said, "And what if I did?" "What if you did?" I couldn't believe her. "SETI, you drove a man to his death!" "You said that already." She looked bored. "So, I made a man terrified. He chose to kill himself." "Bullshit! You killed him as much as if you handed him the rope." "Oh, so he chose hanging?" "SETI." I paused, and added low and serious, "You have to stop this." That stilled her. She was silent a moment, eyes shadowed by the brim of her hat, crimson lips pursed. Finally curled to a smile. "Make me." "What?" "Make me stop," she repeated. And languidly took a chair at the coffee table, indicating for me to do the same. I stared in horror as she pulled out a deck. "One game," she declared, eyes glittering. "A duel. You win, I stop and never play again. You can have your wish." "No." "Toby, people pay thousands to play with me. You don't know what a deal you're getting. Besides, it's the only way to make me stop." She again indicated the chair. I just stared at her, fists clenched. "Why?" "Because, Toby dear, our mother and father's beloved who can do no wrong, because we never finished our game. Remember, when we were little, we started to play, but things went too far. We couldn't end it. I won't be left at a stalemate. Finish the game with me, dearest Toby. Golden child, the one Mom and Dad always loved best. They loved you too. They love me like the alcoholic loves the bottle, a terrible influence that they secretly wish they could obliterate. And it's true, I'm terrible, but perfect, good, Toby. Win against me, and I will stop. Her eyebrows shot up. Reluctantly, dread building in my gut, I sat down opposite her. I threw out one more feeble argument. We don't have enough players. I won't let anyone else get involved. We don't need other players, she corrected. A dual game is a 2-player version. It has a few extra rules, like the double dare. That's where you take your opponent's challenge and double it. So, for instance, if it were, would you kill a kitten? And I accept, you'd have to kill 2. Great example. How are your cats, by the way? All very well. As it happens, they haven't been drawn into any games. She flashed a wicked smile at me as one of said cats, oblivious to the danger it would be in should Seti draw any cards that involved pets, came over and rubbed against her leg, purring. She explained the rules of the duel game as she shuffled. It was basically the same as the regular game, but answers were scored differently. 1 point for yes, 1 point for correct guesses, 0 points for no, 0 points for wrong guesses, 10 points for completed challenge. If a challenge went unfulfilled, it was an automatic loss. If more than one challenge was fulfilled for the same reward, only the most recent challenge would gain the reward. The game would continue until each player had drawn 10 valid combinations. Getting points for saying yes automatically skews the game in your favor, I observed. It skews the game in favor of playing more boldly, yes, Seti agreed. But it's still possible for you to win. I glowered. Seti allowed me to draw first. Would you dance with rotting human entrails to earn a dream vacation? Tame by the current standards of the game. I started to put down my no card, but then remembered I'd get 0 points for it. Of course, if I put down yes, Seti would manage to make those rotting entrails appear, and I didn't even want to think about whether they'd really be human or not. I sighed and pushed forward yes. Seti also slid a card forward. Both of us flipped. Both of us said yes. 1 point for me, 1 for Seti for guessing correctly. I waited for the inevitable challenge, but she only smiled. You're not going to challenge? I asked. No, because you actually do it. And you'll get 10 points, she replied. And obviously, you'll get a dream vacation too, but I'd rather save my money for more interesting rewards. Seti's turn. She flipped the card slowly. Would you fly to Stinky Toenails to gain your name on Mars? Invalid, obviously. She drew again. Would you sing loudly to the president to save world peace? Another invalid combination. Seti drew through more nonsense sentences before finally coming up with a valid combination. Would you kiss a bowl of diarrhea to get a year's supply of ice cream? Ugh, I said. Such a dumb game. Seti smiled and pushed a card forward. I rolled my eyes and did the same. They both flipped. Yes. Of course you would, I said, disgusted. You could challenge, she offered, and give you 10 points. Fuck that. We went back and forth a couple more rounds. My hands were shaking. Soon we got to challenges I wouldn't do. I started playing no. Seti always played yes. She was gaining points and didn't challenge me on the rare times I drew something I felt I could do. And then, as we approached the 10th round that would end the game, Seti drew a combination that made my breath catch. Would you skin yourself to win this game? Seti was already ahead. If I didn't challenge her, she'd win. If I challenged her and she refused, she'd lose. The smart play here would be to pick no. She wouldn't risk anything. She was way ahead of me anyway. The game would end on the next turn. All she had to do was miss 1 point by playing her no card. Playing yes was something only a complete idiot would do, but Seti had never played no. Not in any of the turns we'd had so far. Would she now? Seti looked me in the eye as she put down her card, smiled almost apologetically with a little shrug. Oh, how that smile infuriated me. The lightness of it. The willingness to throw everything down in this stupid, idiotic, foolish game when she was already guaranteed to win. I played my card. We flipped them over. Yes. Fury coursed through me. It was like when we were kids all over again, and said he would brazenly claim she'd do something outrageous when all of us knew she really wouldn't. When she bluffed and I called her on it, and the words spat from my lips before I could think to stop, because how dare she mock me like this, playing like her life hardly mattered. Challenge. It was strange. The expression that flickered across Seti's face. Regret. Fear. Angst. Rage. For just a moment, she reminded me of that little girl again. The little girl who idolized me, who just wanted to be brave enough to impress me, until I called her out for going too far, and every single time, she forced herself to rise to my challenge, remembering that I suddenly regretted my actions. Seti's eyelids closed, fluttered as if she were coming to terms with what had just happened. Then, without a word, she rose to her feet. My parents did a lot of barbecuing in the summers, even the occasional pig roast or carving up venison. I wondered with horror if, among the many implications in this grandly furnished house, they might have a skinning knife. "Seti, wait!" I cried, seizing her arm as she turned around. I forfeit. You hear me? I forfeit. You win. I withdraw my challenge. What? She stammered. You can't forfeit. That's not how it works. Too bad. I'm done. Toby! She shrieked as I grabbed my jacket and rushed for the door. You agreed to finish the game. Yeah? Bite me. I ducked out and slammed the door. From inside, a howl of anguish. High, keening, practically inhuman. God, Seti could be so scary. I hurried away, trying to force the horrible, stupid game from my consciousness, trying to forget how irrational Seti could be. My phone buzzed. We're not finished. We have one turn left. Toby, one turn. She carried on like that all night. I silenced my phone. In the morning, I had so many messages I blocked her. I fully expected calls from our parents, Jules, our mutual acquaintances, email, messenger, voicemails at work, maybe a singing fucking telegram. Seti had a huge network, and I knew my sister had 1,000 ways to contact me. There would be no escaping her wrath until the game was over, and yet... silence. Not so much as a peep. It was this complete absence of communication that unsettled me more than anything. I called our parents, Jules, friends, but they hadn't heard from Seti. Not wanting them to worry, I lied to everyone and said I was just checking in because it had been a while. With every hour, the knot of dread in my gut tightened. Finally, 3 days after our fateful game, there came a knock at my door. I'd been in a state of suspension for so long that my first feeling was relief. At least, we'd get this over with. I went to the door calling out, "Who's there?" To no response. I peeked through the peephole, but it was covered. Just like Seti to play games. Maybe it really was a singing telegram. I opened the door. "Hello?" The word died on my lips. Shifting from hello to hell in what, looking back, seemed chillingly appropriate. On the threshold stood a costumed figure. She was reminiscent of the Easter Bunny. Huge black eyes, plush fur around chipmunkish cheeks, buck teeth, and mauve fur with a fluffy white belly. This wasn't sophisticated like a cosplay persona. No, this was more like the mall-grade Easter variant, vaguely creepy and unsettling like a costume theme park character, a Chuck E. Cheese animatronic. I'd always had a dread of such characters, even as a child. Something about the fakery of the costuming was so off-putting. Now that some unease prickled through me as the bunny spread its arms in a ta-da pose. I said. I stepped back and held open the door, trying to ignore the small voice that wondered what I might see if I lifted the mask off that bunny suit. The bunny strolled in with an exaggerated, happy stride, reminding me again of a costumed character. Who could even tell what was underneath such a suit? The bunny pulled out 2 chairs from my dining table and patted one for me. "Seti?" I said. The bunny pulled a card from a pocket somewhere in his fur and held it up for me to read. "One more turn." "How do I know it's you?" Take off that dumb thing." A head shake. The bunny pointed again to the card, exaggeratedly tapping it and nodding to me. Its suit smelled faintly of copper, and maybe something else. Sweat? Body odor? No, it was more unpleasant than that. Like the smell of a dead mouse that I'd found once in a trap, rotting for days. And I wondered what was under that suit. She wouldn't have done it, would she? She couldn't have... and survived? This had to be an act to make me feel... to make me think that she'd done something crazy. I looked into those bunny eyes, black mesh. I thought I could just glimpse the whites of her eyes, a faint gleam as she looked out at me. Again, that coppery smell, and as we sat at the coffee table, there was... I could see very clearly now, blood dripping from the suit of the bunny. A faint dribble of it. How badly was she bleeding in there? Or was it all an act? Would she even be bleeding still? Would blood really drip through the costume? God, Seti, fine, I'll play the last turn, and if I win, you'll take off that suit and you'll be just fine underneath, all right? Deal? You'll be whole and fine. The bunny made a sound in the affirmative. It was Seti's voice, but sounded wrong, like the vocal cords were somehow deteriorated. It reached into a pocket somewhere in the suit, handed me the would you cards. My turn. Handshaking, I shuffled. I could see now a couple of places where the mauve fur was darker, wet with stains, but that can't be real, I thought. No way that could be real. I swallowed the bile in my throat and dealt the cards. Would you? My hand trembled as I turned each over. Disappear. Yourself. 2. Win. This game. Fuck. Disappear? Did that mean die, end my life, or like witness protection disappear? The meaning was unclear, but I couldn't pick no, or said he would win, and somehow I knew what would happen if she won. She'd lift off her mask, and underneath there would be... Shuddering, I pushed forward my card, and the bunny pushed forward hers. Then we flipped. Yes. The bunny spoke. One word. I tried not to imagine its skinless tongue slurring. Challenge. My heart quickened. Fine, I said. You, Mom, Dad, Jules, everyone we know, you'll never see me again. The rest of my life, no matter how hard you look or how you spend your resources to come after me, I will not be found. I'll be gone, and when I am, I'll have won the game. As I spoke, I felt the air shiver between us. It was as if something had writ my words in my soul, and I knew as deeply and suddenly and surely as I knew my own name that I would disappear so thoroughly I would effectively cease to exist. Somehow I was incredibly calm about this. Goodbye, Seti. I turned, grabbed my bag, and walked out. I drove to our parents' house to tell them that I loved them. They were extraordinarily perplexed when I greeted them, each with a tight embrace, even more so when I begged them to please look after Seti for me. I just hoped it was enough to save my sister, that whatever was under the suit was all part of the drama to draw me in, and everything would return to normal after the game. I just had to disappear. Who? Said Dad. He was a bit hard of hearing. Seti, September? I told him. Who's September? Asked Mom. No, Mom, I'm talking about I stopped, staring at the mantle. A few days ago, I'd been here playing with Seti, and the photos on the mantle had been the same vacation trips as always. Goofy images of Seti, me, and Jules playing as children, but now I was looking at the exact same photos, and it was only me and Jules. Mom, meanwhile, nudged Dad and murmured, "Sweetie, remember how Toby used to pretend to have a little sister?" Oh gosh, that's right. Dad brightened and turned to me. And whenever you did something bad, you'd blame it on September. I was already out the door, rushing back to the game. I declared I would disappear. From the present moment on, I'd be gone, but Seti... I checked my phone, my email, messages, but there was no photographs, no texts, no social media evidence that my sister had ever existed, present or past. I called Jules, but she said the same thing as our parents, that Seti was the imaginary little sister that I made up to blame for the worst outcomes of a childhood game, a game I designed, a game for which I am the guarantor, a game I have been hosting amongst various groups and players for the past few years. And when I at last got home and rushed inside, the bunny was no longer at the table. But the cards were still laid out. A note scrawled beside them on a bloody napkin. Double dare. People still contact me asking why I ended the game. Truth is, the napkin, the only proof of Seti, written in her own distinctive handwriting, disintegrated with time, and I'm not even sure myself what I believe anymore. But I'll tell you this. If anyone ever offers to play the Would You game, no matter what the prize, do not do it. It's not worth it. Learn from my mistakes and never, ever play the Would You game. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and we're currently entering fall, which means Halloween is right around the corner. I just want to say thank you guys for watching tonight's video, listening to tonight's episode of the podcast, and to start expecting more audios as we go closer and closer to the spookiest day of the year. Once October starts, you know what that means. I'll be having out a video every single day until Halloween itself, and I expect to see you there. I mean it. I expect to see you there for every video, for every podcast episode, and I expect to see you like, comment, and subscribe, and all that jazz bell, what do you do on podcasts? Follow on Spotify? Yeah, that, for the month of October, and especially so you don't miss the 13-day countdown. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. Some of these amazing folks are Diana Kraus, AcidSystem, Blake Rattler, Brandon Mendoza, Brenna Caltuna, ChicagoHitman, CoryxKenshin, CrusaderChocobo, Dakota Best, Daniel Poulsen, Dante Kinkade, Enchanted Buns, Estebean, Hades' Nephew, himbojerry, Our Minute Seconds Time, Ingegerd Solstrom, Jay Kearns, Jadis Pet, McMog, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Psychomel, Plant Piz, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samara Lynn, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sully Man, Tully Sue, Team Leo 76, The Demented Voice in Your Head, The Chavez Brothers, The Ginger Bros, Tommy Walters, Viceroy Scorn, William Wellington, Your Bro Keegan, Zabub, and Shadow Gardens. A huge thank you to you guys, everybody who shows up in the description down below, and as always folks, sweet dreams.